Hi, Victor.
What's up, man? How you doing? I almost wear that exact shirt today. That's so funny. I almost did.
Yeah.
What time it is? Supposed to start at 1, right?
One.
Yeah. All right. We got a couple minutes.
You prepared to watch it set up?
That's cool. Traveling light, right? Just
Heard you were giving that pebble
absolutely.
away after the event. Is that true?
What's that?
Heard you were giving that pebble away after the event. Is that true?
Is it?
That's what this guy said.
Hey, do you have? I think I woke up early. I had to feel just after the first night I woke up.
And I actually, all we could do was sleep. I'd actually been hearing my name so much. For hours. In the beginning of it.
You don't play like you know, I was in a tree before when they called him. I didn't know that till after I got married.
Holly and the kids are here.
All was Adam.
Yeah, but they didn't come down here.
Right.
They probably just go today.
No, they're going somewhere.
He's big. He's right there. Only everyone says that.
That's a nice try. That's awesome.
Did you have a power adapter?
That's awesome. 20-inch Pro.
Same market or someone must have I need a, yeah.
Were they on the other side of the street? You did it all, I mean, you did it all about it. Two homes.
He's coming to
Yeah, we'll see you at the show tonight. Oh, should we drive with us? Oh, really?
Hey Vic, I'm from Denby, man.
Denby.
I remember you when you were like 6 years old.
I'm still sick. Did you go to Denby?
No, I'm in this area now.
I mean, did you go to Denby?
Oh, no. My kids did, yeah.
Were you living there?
Allen Drive, right behind.
Wow, that's real close.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was on Tillerson.
right, exactly.
Yeah. When did you live there?
Oh, I left, oh man, probably 88, 89, when I left.
When you left? Me
Yeah.
too. Same here.
Okay,
I left 88.
okay.
Get your Jeep. Hey, what is this? Oh, what do you want with the mic? Where is that? Where's that PA? Is that where we use it? Oh, this is my Oh, I see. Then forget it. Two strikes trouble. Yeah. I thought it was a. Oh, there's only two XLR in. I see.
You gotta plug it in first. That cord, pull that cord and see if it's got anything.
We need to fix yours one fake. I think it's
Picture perfect.
real cool.
I'm gonna make sure it's not the days.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I can read the side of the leaf.
I have a cable here.
Okay.
So at some point, we'll be taking questions. So you can start formulating your questions now.
It's actually
Come
cable.
on in, you take.
Cable?
Not two bases. It's probably the amp. Probably the amp. Like that's two bases.
Snapchat. No, it was right at that end. The cable.
I think it's the amp. What do you think? Because
I was wiggling that end of the cable. Try that Snapchat. That should work.
Give you that price tag.
That working?
yep. Of course it won't.
Display.
What's up? Do I get to pick?
Hey, well, thank you all for coming to Island Music. Start by thanking them for putting this together and making it easy for us to get together and have a good time. They did all the work. We just showed up. So in a day and age where any business has to struggle to stay alive, um, let's make sure that a store like this can stay alive and keep doing fun things like this. It was free to get in, right?
Yeah.
They did all the work. So thank you, Island Music. I also want to thank Samson and Harkey for supporting me and helping me get around and do things like this. And it's good to be here with my good friend Anthony Wellington.
Yeah.
And of course, all of you, thanks for being here, taking off from work, school, or whatever you had to do to be here. We appreciate it. So let's make the most of this time.
Thank you. Well, that's fun. Yeah. That's fun. A lot of
I realize that it seems to me, I don't really know, but it seems to me that these days musicians don't get together and just do what we just did, which is just jam, just play, for the sake of playing, for the fun of it. It seems like we practice by ourselves all the time these days. And we practice, we get one thing good enough, we put it on YouTube and count the number of hits. And we consider ourselves good musicians because of the number of hits we get. But if you think about learning any language by yourself, you realize that it's hard to do. And no matter how good you think you are by yourself, you're probably speaking that language with an accent. And someone who's native to that language can hear that accent where you can't. So for those of us that are practicing with ourselves, I urge us to find people to play with. And I hear that all the time. Well, I can't find anyone to play with. But right now you're surrounded by 100 other people. And I'm sure some of these people here today would love to play with you. So if you're looking for people to play, I would start right here. There's always people in your town. Good musicians, some of the world's best musicians, I'm sure live in this town and are probably in this room.
Lycel. Raise your hand, Lycel.
But in more cases that not, they're not. They're at home playing by themselves, just like you, wishing they had someone to play with. So get out there and explore, man. Play with people, find people. Doesn't matter if they're better or worse.
Right.
Just play with them.
I think one of the things.
Use your mic just so people in the back.
I think one of the things that happened, and maybe our generation kind of created this monster, but we got out of the habit of playing with people if we felt they weren't as good as us. And I think the shame in that is that, you know, they're counting, inexperienced musicians are counting on people like us to help bring them along. And so, but instead we just lock them in a room with other beginners. And but imagine, music is a language just like English. Imagine if we did that with English, that we wouldn't allow 2-year-olds to talk to us because they knew to the language. That's how absurd it is. There's nobody in this room that would choose not to have a conversation with a 2-year-old because they knew to the language. We're just experienced enough that we would adopt our language to fit theirs instead of using 6-syllable words. And I don't know many bass players that know any 6-syllable words, but just go with me here. Instead of using 6-syllable words, we'll just use 1-syllable words. But we don't choose to not communicate with them. I love jamming with Lycel. He's more musical than most adults I know. And just like I wouldn't choose to not have a conversation with him, I wouldn't choose to not play with him. And so I just tell everybody to adopt that attitude. If somebody wants to play with you, think of it as being an honor. I've never heard Victor turn down jamming with anybody. You know, we just did a 3-week camp and I just saw him playing with people. It was so great that after about 4 or 5 days, he stopped being important to him. That's what I love about camp. Like, right. Oh, that's just Victor. You know?
It is cool. It really is cool. We had Christian McBride at the camp, and we had a fun little jam with Christian and Jeff Coughlin
and every student played.
Roy, and they got everybody up to play. When it was supposed to be over, Christian just wasn't ready to leave. He got off the bass, got on keyboards. He started singing James Brown tunes. He was like, "Guitar player, play this." Taught him a cool James Brown lick. Boy, it just got good to Christian. He just got the mic, started singing James Brown. But that to me is the joy of music. It can do that to people, regardless of where you're from, what your religious background is, your political status. Even if you don't speak the same language, I've been able to do the exact same thing. Not speaking the same verbal language, but as soon as music starts to speak, it's on. It's just like everybody's happy, smiling, and we instantly relate to each other.
Christian jammed with everybody, and Jeff Coughlin had just got off the road with Dave Matthews the day before. He played with everybody. Roy Future Man Wooten spent almost the whole camp there and didn't even wait to be invited up. I just love that about him. So a band would start playing, they wouldn't have a drummer, and here's a dude who's a bona fide star. A bona fide star would just get up and play because, you know, that's the environment they grew up in. You know, that's most of us older musicians. George Henderson grew up in it. George, I got a beef with you, man. George studied with me forever, and then
hey, let me first say I have no beef with you.
George had a 59 precision, and he had the nerve to come to my lesson room and say, "Hey, I think this bass wants to be with Victor Wooten," and I'm like, "Victor Wooten." So that dude got 50 bases. Why does it want to be? It's a 59 precision. Give it to me. So George came to the next camp and gave Victor this 59 precision and hasn't asked about it since. And just like, I don't know if he knows how much that bass is worth, but that was just.
Well, I will say this. That was the introduction to me as to how great a Fender was. I never grew up with one and didn't particularly want one. But it happened, it was my 40th birthday that year. I appreciate that. And I put it away, I was busy, put this Fender away for a while. And then I got asked to record a song for a woman named India Ari. And so I said, well, let me get this Fender out, see what it's about. You know, I've heard about Fenders forever. You know, I never played them. Man, I got that thing out, plugged it in. Man, that thing was so amazing. And it wasn't until then that I finally got it.
You sent me a recording of it. I don't think they ended up using that reverb.
Well, no, they loved it. Asking the producer ended up saying, I love what you did on that electric, but we want it upright. He said, can you play the exact same thing on an upright bass? Because there was a song called, on India RE record, a song called Summer. And it's kind of got a country, soulful country flavor to it.
Is JD on that too?
JD Blair's on drums. And they wanted an upright. And I knew the producer, and he knew JD and I from years back. And he wanted what JD Blair and I bring when we're together. He wanted that on that vibe. He wanted that vibe on that song. So anyway, I ended up having to replace the Fender part with upright bass. But the real track, in my mind, is the Fender version. Oh, I have it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fender, man, it's just dirty enough. And, you know, nowadays it's all clean and active and everything, which I like too. And which I was used to since since 77, playing in the Olympic. And
77, weren't you like 12?
Yeah.
You had an Olympic at 12?
I did. It's my second bass. My second bass
Series
ever
one?
was a Series 1 Olympic. Yeah.
Oh my. At 12?
12, yeah. 5th grade. No, 7th grade. I'm sorry. 7th grade. Yeah, 5th grade sounds about right. 5th grade and 12 years old. I was in the 7th grade.
You ain't but 5 feet tall, man. I was only like 4 feet tall.
Yeah, the Olympic was tough. But I never grew up with a Fender. And it wasn't until that bass that I really fell in love with the sound.
He was rubbing salt in the wound at camp too. He was just bragging about, I got this 59 precision.
3. No, I really do appreciate that though. But if you want it back,
You ain't getting it.
right, that's the right answer. No, I do. I really, really do appreciate it. It's rare. I mean, I do. It's not bragging, but I get offered instruments quite a bit, and I don't need instruments. So most of the time is no. You know, it does seem like it would be fun to get offered gear gigs and endorsements, but the thing is that you end up having to say no more than you say yes, and saying no to people is not fun. So for those that are wanting things, you know, you got to really look deep into what you're really asking for. As really even becoming a professional musician. Anyone that hasn't done it yet, we probably don't really know fully what you're looking for. We think it's just playing music on stage and getting accolades, but that's the smallest part of it. I mean, literally the smallest part of it.
He'll be on stage a total of an hour and a half tonight. And then, you know, you got to be able to live with somebody for 22 hours on the bus. And people overlook that part, you know, and a tour bus is big, but when you got 10 people on it and you're driving from Nashville to Las Vegas, you know, the vibe just has to be right. You just have to be with good vibe people. And fortunately, we have that. We've had, I've been in Victor's band for 15 years. We've had 2 band meetings. Probably only 2 rehearsals, too. Just 2 band meetings. Yeah, so.
And band meetings usually happen when there's a problem. If we have a band meeting on tour, you know, there's something that we need to discuss. Yeah. And I'm a talker. I don't want to send an email. If you're there, let's talk, look at each other eye to eye. Because, you know, being a professional musician is one thing, but being a band leader is another one. That's a whole nother skill set, man.
I don't want that job.
Yeah, me either, you know. But you know, you'll find yourself there. You'll be an MD, which is a musical director or whatever. Most of us probably are bassists and guitarists, drummers in this room, and even keyboard players. We are part of a section of the band that we call the rhythm section. In most cases, that means we're going to be supporting other people. We'll be supporting the vocalist, the horn player, or something like that. But whether we're supporting it or not, that's what our job is as a rhythm section instrument. And a good segue right here is into the fact that most of us that play these instruments don't practice supporting people. Supporting people is not part of our normal practicing regimen. You know, we practice soloing, learning more licks, playing more melodies, things like that. When that's all good skills to have, but it's not the #1 thing that we'll get called for.
Yeah, I've yet to hear a recording of a Jameson solo.
Right. We had Lee Sklar, great bassist. We had him on the phone during this last camp. And he said that he had calculated that an estimate that he had recorded on about 26,000 records.
Including one of my favorites, Sarah Smile.
Sarah Smiles, yeah. One of my favorites is Raining Men by the Weather Girls.
Right.
Some of y'all might be old enough to remember that one. But he's played on everything from different TV shows and things. But I asked him, out of those 26,000 records he played on, how many times had he been asked to solo on this record? He said 0.
26,000.
None. Right, but he gets that kind of work because he's a good supporter. He can hear the song and he's learned what the perfect bass line is for that song right away. Most of us don't practice that skill. Lee told me this was probably 7 years ago or 8 years ago, back when Steve Bailey and I were doing a thing called the Bass Vault. This is an online bass thing. We interviewed Lee Sklar, and he was telling us that one time he had recorded a record for us, a country artist. I can't remember who it was, but he had recorded a record. And then this band, you know, after hearing a bunch of records that Lee had recorded for this artist, the country artist band, live touring band, said, you know what, we could play these parts. Why don't you let us come in the studio and do your next record? So the country artist said, okay. And what the musicians on tour realized, that there's a difference in learning a part someone's already created. There's a difference in being in the studio and someone plays you a demo with no bass on it and you have to create the right track.
Under the clock, under pressure.
Right, by a certain time limit. They hadn't developed those skills. They could learn anything Lee had already done, but they couldn't create the right part. So in the end, it cost the artist more money because he had to record the record twice. Once with his touring band and then redo the whole thing, calling Lee Sklar and those guys back in. So that's something that a lot of us that want, well, it doesn't matter what kind of musician you want to be, but definitely if you're going to be in the studio, you want to work on that creativity skill. And in more cases than not, most of us will probably have to simplify our bass parts.
I think
or our guitar parts.
I think a lot of times with bass players, well, probably all musicians, but bass players, we think the part that we're adding has to be the masterpiece, as opposed to the collective being the masterpiece. We think, so a lot of times I'll go in the studio and it's just a drum track and a scratch guitar, and there's so much space. And the tendency is to fill up all that space without even being aware or thinking about, sensitive enough to know that they got to layer some guitar tracks, a bunch of vocals. So we have a tendency to not monitor our activity level because we're trying to make what we do be the masterpiece of the whole song.
Right. Right. When you think of like a machine, like a car or airplane that works together, they got little tiny screws and rivets that don't get any attention at all. It's not a big gear. It's just these little tiny things, but they are just as important as anything else. Because if they're not doing their job, this engine can't work properly. So we are like that in a band. It's these simple parts. You know, when we listen to our favorite songs, like if I listen to the music that I grew up, one is James Brown. When I pick it apart, I realize there's a lot of simple parts going on that make up the whole. Like when we were at the studio and Christian told Spence, here, play this guitar part. As soon as Spence learned it, he started to change it. And Christian and myself said, no, don't change it. You just screwed it up. If the screw tried to be something else, it doesn't work. You just do your job.
Be the masterpiece.
Right. He was just trying to, like, don't change it. It's working just like that, you know. So anyway, how do we start talking about that?
I think, like, if you think of a bass line like this.
I knew I would use that.
That song didn't require anything more than that, and we were an inexperienced musician. That was Duck Dunn. An inexperienced musician would try to fill up, and I hear it in jams too. Some people say, especially at camp, younger people say, "Let's jam," and the bass player grab bass and go. I'm like, well, you didn't leave me any room to join in. But if you had went. So that part was inviting immediately and made him want to fill that gap. And we do the same thing when we're talking. If you're a real good conversationalists, you'll purposely leave a gap to invite somebody in. You'll hear black preachers do that when they on their sermons because they got to get those, yeah, man, amen. And they got to get those shouts in from the congregation, and they're smart enough to leave room for that punctuation.
Very, very true.
Yeah, we won't repeat that.
But being a good listener is the other half of it.
Right.
So being a good listener is the other half. And that, I mean, that's probably the first half, is we should be good listeners, you know. And they always tell us, this is way off topic, but they tell us men that we're not good listeners. And they're right. Very much right. So we want to work on that. That's a great musical skill.
I see a bunch of female faces going,
Anyway, anybody have any questions? As you can tell that we think of music like a language. We could go heavier into that. But since we only have a little bit of time, we have to get the sound check. We want to make sure that you come away here, leaving here with what you want. So let's answer your question. Yes, sir.
What approach do you take in learning songs, such as Isn't She Lovely? Do you learn bass line first? Do you learn melody? Do you learn chords?
I learned all of those things.
And everybody heard the question?
Mhm.
Our approach into learning songs, a song like Isn't She Lovely? How do we approach it? Do we learn the bass line first, the melody? What?
I'm a sucker for melody, so even if I'm playing that with a band and I'm just playing the bass part, I think I can be a better supportive bass player if I learn the melody too. A lot of times when I'm doing a solo piece, I'll learn, of course, the chords, melody, and bass line, see how I can fit it together. But even as a person playing in a band, especially a band that solos, I can draw so much from the melody. If there's a part of the song that may be hard for me to outline chord-wise, the melody works over that. So I'll still quote from the melody. I think knowing the melody and being able to sing makes you a better bass player. I mean, I can always hear when a bass player can sing and the bass lines that they choose. Because the bass line sings to I mean, that could be what he played. Could have been the melody of the song. And you can tell that a singer wrote that bass line. He wasn't putting his ego on display. He was just trying to find, to me, a bunch of melodies that fit together. Basically, that's how I think of it. All these horn parts and string parts and vocal parts and bass parts and guitar parts. For me, they're all just melodies that we're putting in different roles and different ranges, and they're fitting together.
I listen to the song. I want to be able to sing the song like I sing a Michael Jackson tune. I want to know it that well. And that's my approach. I just listen to the song over and over. I'm learning a big orchestra piece right now. And I'm just listening to it over and over so I can sing the violin parts, all the parts. A lot of the times, if we just learn the bass part, we may not know the song. And your goal is to play the song, not the bass part. You are the bass player, but you're playing a song. If you don't know the song, you probably won't know how that bass part relates to the song. And what will end up happening is if you mess up that bass part, you stop playing the song to get the bass part right, when you should continue playing the song. So by learning the song and then going back and learning the bass part to the song, the bass part makes sense. It's like if you're an actor and you're going to learn lines to a play, you want to know what the play is about first before you go learning your individual lines. You go learning your individual lines, you have no context. So I say listen to the whole song over and over. And I would say do that before you touch your instrument, so that you're not learning the song, the bass part, and where it is on your instrument all at the same time.
Get familiar with two things at the same time.
Yeah, 2 or 3 things at the same time. When you have the song inside you, you can come up with your own bass part, right? But you do want to learn the bass part. But by the time you're learning the bass part, you should know the song. That's my approach.
Victor has a song called Two Timers, and we were in Hungary one time. It was probably one of the few times where I just wanted to quit playing. Him and Dorico was just sound checking on this new song he wrote called Two Timers. And it's called Two Timers because it's in 2 different time signatures at the same time. And I grew up playing R&B, so that doesn't even relate to me at all. That doesn't even make any sense. So I'm listening to them play this, and they're smiling, and Dorico.
And we're switching between the 2 time signatures that wheel back and forth.
Oh man, it was. I'm almost ready to quit just thinking about it. But and they're smiling like Victor and Dorico. You could just make up a time signature, and they'll make it. You can say 23:17. And they'll just start playing and smiling and not missing beat. And I'm counting on my fingers like. but I was trying to join in, and I just couldn't wrap. And I'm good with numbers. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I told Victor, I was like, man, I'm not really feeling good about my playing right now. I'm not feeling good about the song. I don't want to do it any damage. And he just said, just put the instrument down, stop touching the bass, and listen to it for a month. And I listened to it for a month, and I realized after a month, and I started touching the bass, I was familiar with the song. I wasn't learning something that I was unfamiliar with, and I still can't wrap my head around it because it's in 2 time signatures, and that's just like not normal people stuff. But I can play it. We'll probably play it. I can play it. Yeah, I mean, I don't speak German, but if I hear you say 3 or 4 sentences in German over and over again, at some point, I should just be able to hear it, even if I can't wrap my head around it.
And that's the beauty of music. You don't have to understand it.
Yeah.
You just feel it. You know, if you listen to it enough, you'll get it. You know, like if I say, hey, let's jam, we're going to be in 5/4. A lot of you would be like, what? But if I just went, everyone can get that, right? You don't have to know what time signature it's in. But you just listen to it. Your body will tell you. A dancer will never have to ask questions before they dance. A singer won't have to ask questions before they sing. Only us musicians have to ask questions. So we're always a step behind everyone else. We don't want to do that. Yes, sir, Nat.
When you guys are asked to take a solo in the middle of a jam.
When we're asked to solo?
To solo in the middle of a jam.
In the middle of a jam.
How do you keep the groove in the bottom end slipping out when you try to go up high and do the high stuff?
Really good question.
Is that
really
James?
good question.
Yes, sir.
I didn't recognize you with the beard.
How you doing, man?
Question being, when we're asked to solo in the middle of a jam or a song, we say, how do we keep the bottom from falling out? Like the bass line is just going away. Marcus Miller told me this story when he was first playing with Miles Davis. Miles asked him to solo, so he went up high and started doing this stuff, and Miles stopped the song. And Miles said, hey, can you play the bass while you do that? And so one of my first answers would be to listen to Marcus Miller, because he has mastered
He's a master of that. Yeah.
For whatever reason, us bass players think we have to go up high to solo, because we're trying to play a game we'll never be as good at as the higher instruments. We're trying to play the horn player's game, or the upper end of the piano's game, or the guitar player up there's game. That ain't our game. Our game is to stay low and make it groove, right? So there's a great song from a band called Taste of Honey. It's called Boogie Oogie Oogie, I think. And in the middle of this song, this is the bass line right here. That's the song, right? And the girl who's playing this part gets a bass solo. And Anthony's gonna play the bass solo. They go, listen to the bass now. That's the bass solo. That's it. Right. For some reason, us learn, practice, bass players forget about we can do that, right? A lot of the times what's driving the song is the bass line. That's what's making it groove. It's like the locomotion. So why we feel we need to give that up just to take a solo, it doesn't make sense in the first place.
You guys familiar with the song Brick House? Yeah. If I said hum Brick House, everybody in here is going to hum the bass line, no other part. That's the best part of that song. Why give up the best part of the song to show that you can play? And think about this: if the band is taking turns soloing, every person in that band has the benefit of that great bass line under them while they're soloing. And then as soon as the bass player goes to take a solo, the best part of the song is gone. And so now the audience goes from doing this, for me, which is the best audience reaction you can get, not even dancing, but people won't move their head like this unless they're feeling it. They could be sitting in their seats. People will dance if they're drunk, but people don't do this unless it's feeling good. And then they stop doing this and they'll go, I mean, you might get a jaw-dropping reaction, but for me, this is when I look out in the audience, this is what I want to see.
So a couple of things you can do. You can solo down low, A solo just means it's your chance to say what you want. Just the same way you stood up and asked the question, that was a solo. You can solo by just doing the bass line and not changing anything. You can also solo up high but restate the bass line. Right? So that's what one thing Marcus is good at, is he can solo for maybe 2 or 3 bars, but that last bar he'll restate the bass line and then go back up high. So, but if you know that the bottom is going to fall out, here's the thing: if people are dancing, do not go up high, right? Or else they'll quit dancing, right? Unless you can make that bass solo groove. If you can make it groove so hard, they can keep dancing to it, and then you can go up high. For example, if I'm playing, just play a bass line. No, I'm sorry, play a drum beat. 1, 2, 3. If I'm here, this is my bass line. It could be a mistake for me. Right? But if I can take a solo like, right? You still feel that. And what will happen, people will treat that as a breakdown. They won't treat it so much as a solo. They'll feel it as a breakdown, and 99% of the time, that space that's created, the audience will fill it in with clapping. They'll start clapping to the beat, right? That's also another sneaky way of waking up an audience that's not listening. You create a background, you leave space, it's still got to groove heavy, and the audience will fill the space. You don't want to force them to listen to you by playing too much, and that's the mistake a lot of us make. But we want to invite them in by providing groove and space, and they'll fill in the rest of the groove on beat. So you can take a solo like that, pull them in, restate the bass line, and then throw in a flashy thing, get their attention. But depending on the type of music that you're playing, will determine what to do, when to do it. But if you know that you're going to lose the bottom end, don't ever do that in order just to show what you got.
It's good that we have 2 bass players on tour. I mean, Victor could play 8 bass lines at the same time, but he likes having a bass player on stage with him because he doesn't have to worry about that. And he's a really good soloist. He's so good that we decided to name our band after him. So we call the band the Victor Wooten Band. But you know, now that I'm taking solo with the band, it's just really, really comfortable having the bass and not having to worry about that bottom being gone.
But at the same time, as a bass player playing under a bass soloist, you have to know how to play the bass under the bass solo, so that there's not a whole lot of just added low end. So a lot of the times, if I know Anthony's, basically we have a rule. We just did a tour a couple years ago. Has it been 2 years now?
Mm-hmm.
A couple years ago, where we had 4 basses on tour, and we did it with Stanley Marcus and me, 3 basses. But our general rule is whenever there's more than 1 bassist on stage at the same time, we thin our tone out a little bit. Our rule was whoever's playing the bottom line, the bass line, you keep your tone fat. If you're up top playing chords or whatever, you thin it out, or else it's just low end piled on top of each other. And in my opinion, that's the #1 mistake bassists make when they play with other basses, because everyone has that fat tone, and it's hard to make it work at that point because you're piling low frequencies on with each other.
That's also a good thing about him having a tenor bass out on tour. And at camp, I'll use a piccolo bass a lot. Like if we do a bass jam, I'll just go to a piccolo bass, and then I can satisfy another role more easily.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully that helps, cousin. Yes, sir. Not again in the black hat here.
Yes, getting back to learning material.
Learning material.
What would you suggest methodology be if you're given a lot of stuff to learn in a very short time?
A lot of stuff to learn in a very, very short time. For me, I listen to it all the time, literally when I'm sleeping also. I literally put it on, because your ears don't stop working when you're sleeping, neither does your brain. But the part of the brain that's doubting and say, oh man, that's hard. Oh man, I only have 3 weeks left. That part goes to sleep. Right? So you'll wake up, I'm in this song, you'll be dreaming about the song, and you'll know it better when you wake up. So I listen to it all the time, again, so that I can sing it like a Michael Jackson song. That's my first thing, especially if I only have a short period of time. Because you can't sit down with your bass 24 hours a day. But you can listen literally 20 of those hours. Right? So a lot for me is just listening. And then a little bit of the time of the day that I have to get on my instrument, I can figure it out. But I'm thinking about things as I'm listening too. You know, oh, this is the song that makes me think of this. This is the song that it's funky. I feel like dancing when it goes to this section. I remember that. So that's my thing. And then knowing how to take notes, whether you can write or read music at all, you got to jot down notes in your language, something you understand. If you can write music, read music, piece of cake. The better you can do it, the faster you can write it down. Some of these songs you can write it down as you're listening to it. You know, but so that's where the more you know about music, the better you are at learning a lot of material in a short time, because you have a whole bunch of different ways of singing that song, not just your ears. You know, a lot of us are just ear players, and you know, if you're Dennis Chambers or a George Benson who can't read music or something like that, then you better be able to play like Dennis Chambers or George Benson.
Yeah, I hate when people say, I'm not going to learn music, you got to read music because Dennis can't read. I'm like, well, you can't play like Dennis.
But you'll need the more ways you have of understanding that music, the better.
It's so, you know, it's so nice to be able to, we work on ear training a lot, and we're to the point that a lot of progressions we can hear. So we can actively learn songs without touching the instrument, and I like doing that. I like challenging myself, and like Victor said, he started out with easy country songs, just listening to them while he's driving in the car on Sirius Radio just to analyze music. You know,
I use the country music station all the time because the chord changes are easy, and I just practice. You know, that's a 1 chord. Oh, that's a minor 6. Oh, we went to the 4 chord. Oh, a sharp 4. They don't do that in country. I'm not on the 5. You know, it's hard for me to do that with the jazz station, even though I might like that music better. But for practice, you know. But if there's music that I have to learn, it's playing when I'm in the car. And if I'm at home with my wife's permission, we're listening to it as we see. Yeah, but all the time listening to it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Do you have any tips or tricks for how to keep your focus on your part when you're playing with a band, and how to keep up with how many times you're supposed to play your part before you go to the next part?
The question is, any tips or tricks for how to keep your focus on your part in a song or something like that? And what was the second part of it? Oh, how many times you play your part?
Yeah, track.
Yeah. One of the easiest ways of learning to keep how many times you play your part, if it's a vocal song, you're listening to the lyrics, right? Because if it's a vocal song, that means the song is about something. So let's say it's Little Red Riding Hood, right? You can't get to the, what big eyes part you have before Grandma gives you the basket and you go on a walk, right? If you don't know that story, you might mix it up. So you got to learn this story. What's this song about? Is there a storyline? I urge us all musicians to learn the lyrics to a song, or else you are painting a picture of something you don't know about. The song is about something. And a lot of times instrumental songs are about something also. And if you know what the writer made it about, then you can paint that picture better. Know the melody. Learn the melody. But when you understand phrases, in Western music, most of the time our music moves in 4 bars, 8 bars, and 16-bar phrases. Every so often 12-bar phrases, a lot of times in blues progressions. But most of the time it's 4s, 8s, and 16s. And you want to get to where you can feel those phrases. You want to be not counting 4s and 8s and 16s. You should be able to feel them. And at first and most of the time you do, because a good drummer is setting up 4s and 8s. But once you learn to feel those phrases and you know, come up with exercises that just teach you to feel phrases, is good.
Playing along with songs that have already been recorded, they will already have phrase length in it. But you're talking about for Lysel, right? Like he's 7. Just let him have fun.
No, but he, when he plays with his brother, a lot of times he'll stop and look at his brother, and what he's doing is playing the guitar.
That happens when I'm playing with Victor too. I noticed
all of
it.
So how do you keep your focus and not lose track of where you're supposed
That's a good question for Victor. You know, Victor and the Wooten brothers, they were on tour opening for Curtis Mayfield when Victor was just 5 years old. So he was touring at 5. So you just couldn't randomly just play and stop and do whatever. So as a 5-year-old, you had to keep track of that.
I never thought about it. I just learned the song. Yeah, I never thought about it. And you know, but even if we were just jamming, like even in the middle of the song, there might be a long guitar solo. But you're listening for cues. It's almost like talking. How do you know when it's your turn to talk? You know, we don't have a conversation like, you know, hey, Anthony, how you been? I went to the store today. Okay, my turn. We don't have to say that. We just know. You know what I mean? But if you have to count, then you count. But a lot of times, you know, it's rare that I'm actually counting bars, 1 bar, 2 bar. I'm usually counting phrases, and that's hard to explain.
It is.
I know what 8 bars feels like. I know what 16 feels like. And I'm just waiting for that 16 to go by, or whatever it is, you know. But then it may be a thing where you're listening for a certain cue from another musician. But if it's a song that moves in a certain way, you have to learn the song verbatim. Then you go. If you can't do it from your part, then you got to listen for cues. When the lyric goes up to the high, to this line or this third, or if the drummer opens up his hi-hat here, you know, you're listening for other cues. But it sounds like the question might be different. Do you mean like they're just jamming together, the brothers are just jamming?
Both, actually. A lot of times they will just be jamming, and it's like they haven't played with each other enough to know how to read what the other person is doing. And so that's when he stops and waits and looks at him. You know?
The other thing, you know, what we do, we'll just literally yell at each other on stage.
Or look at each other big.
Literally, to the bridge.
Yeah.
James Brown did it. Nothing wrong with that. You know, there's even an iPhone app for musical hand signals. You want to go to the bridge, you want to stop, you know, but you can make up hand signals.
Okay.
You know, there's no rules against it. As long as the music sounds good.
Right.
That's all it is. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
In learning, back to learning songs.
Yeah.
One of the difficulties that I have is like with gospel music. But what I try to do is, like you say, listen.
Mm-hmm.
But the changes, a lot of times the progression is difficult to learn. I mean, you know, I can hear it over and over and over again.
Yes.
But the progression is different from, you know, from easy progressions. You know, just continue to listen to the music.
Yeah. Go ahead.
For me, just like any endeavor that I'm serious about, that I love, I just try to know as much about that endeavor as I can. Like, I love learning music theory, and it's beyond the geek level. But it helps me with those kind of things. Like what you find when you start studying music theory is that some chords have direction; they're pointing somewhere.
Yes.
Like, so if I can hear a dominant chord, functioning dominant chords either go down a fifth or go down a half step. So I can kind of listen for that movement. And with a lot of black gospel, there are a lot of tritone substitutions. So you're getting a lot of chromatic movement on those 2-5-1s. And if you know that, you can be ready for it. I mean, you know, you'll find that in a lot of different genres, they have their own things that kind of show up a lot. You just got to know what those things are.
Yeah, I don't really know any tricks for learning songs, except to listen to them over a lot. A lot of the times, for me, it's the simple songs that are harder to remember, for me, because the simple song sounds just like that simple song, but it's slightly different, and I got to remember that slightly different. Sometimes when they're really different, it's easier to remember, because there's no other song that goes like that. But, you know, again, I just suggest listening to it all the time. Get a recording of it, not just listening to it when they play it at church or at the rehearsal. Guaranteed, if I'm at a rehearsal, I've got now it happens to be my cell phone, and I'm recording it. I'm recording that rehearsal so that I can take it home. On my way home, I'm listening to it in the car. On the way back to rehearsal, I'm listening to it again just to familiarize myself. But for me, if there's a trick, it's just listening to it over and over.
Listening is the key to effective communication in all kinds of communication. Listening is the key.
Yes, sir.
How do you guys take care of your hands? You know, have you ever had any problems or issues with, you know, repetitive stress types? And I guess we could extend this to ears as well.
We're both former athletes.
The question was, how do we take care of our hands? Have we had any repetitive injuries, and how do we take care of it? And then you're extending the question to the ears also, right? I'm surprised I even heard that.
Victor studied a lot of martial arts, and he studied a real martial art, so there was a lot of tendon work. And I'm speculating. I'm speaking for him. And if he says something different, then he says something different. But I think a lot of why he's never had any hand problems is because he's done so much tendon training. Like if you watch old martial arts movies, and you'll see older dudes still punching through walls or doing handstands. It's not because of muscle, because you can lose that. That can kind of like shift on you. But once you build up a tendon, once you do tendon exercises, you never lose that, and your tendons can become like steel rods.
And we learned that from an old kung fu guy. And I was lucky enough when I lived in Virginia to study with him. I never put the two together until much later that people have been asking me about problems with hands, and when I tap, my hands must be real strong because they can't hit those notes. I never thought about it, but I do believe that those tendon exercises help. But I've also been playing bass since about 2. I really think that helps the most. And more than that, I don't look at it like taking care of my hands. When I'm warming up for a gig, I don't warm up my hands. I warm up my body. If I'm going to warm up at all, it's my whole body. Like a boxer, like any athlete, right? A person who's a quarterback doesn't just sit there and exercise their arm or warm up their arm. They warm up the whole body because the hands are connected to the rest of the body. So I like to warm up my whole body as well as my mind. One of the best exercises for me for a gig would be to just play some basketball.
Yeah.
You know, that's fun. You know, and the whole body's going. If you were out with my band and to see us before a show, if we're doing anything, it'll look like my brother Joseph and Anthony are warming up for a boxing match. They're backstage shadow boxing, doing push-ups, sit-ups, you know, working up a whole body sweat.
We used to bring a deck of cards on the bus. You flip them over, and you had to do that many push-ups.
But for me, it's a whole body thing. But here's another thing just to think about. Is any horn players in the house? You play horn? You ever had carpal tunnel or anything like that? No. How long you been playing?
3 years.
3 years. Okay, she's new to it. But it's rare. It's possible, but it's rare that you'll ever meet a wind instrument that has the same problems you're talking about. So why do you think that might be? What could point to some reason why wind players may not have carpal tunnel and us string players and piano players do?
Because they have to stop. Stand up, maybe?
Because they stand up? Well, you stand up when you play, right? A horn player doesn't have to stand up.
Breathing.
Breathing. What about breathing?
A good wind player knows how to breathe right.
Yeah, they have to breathe to play their instrument. We don't. Right?
And we're not doctors, but we have it on good authority that if you don't breathe, you're going to die.
So I've seen it more times than not. When you play something, especially when you play something hard, you stop breathing. Wind players can't do that. So again, we're not doctors, but maybe that has something to do with it. So just breathe, relax, and if you do get problems, listen to them. Right? A lot of times it's telling you something. Learn what that is. But I also suggest exercise. You know, do all the things us guys hate, like yoga, stuff like that, Tai Chi. Get rest, eat really well and just take care of your body. You won't get another one, right? And taking care of my body is more important than for me than playing music.
You may find that a lot of those problems are exaggerated by the computer keyboard. Like I have way more issues from a computer keyboard than I do playing bass.
Yeah, gotta get the right angle on that keyboard. The same way you might have to change your angle on your bass, Stanley, or your guitar, whatever. Stanley Jordan, who's known for playing the instrument tapping, like a piano, he had to get another strap made, or an addition to his strap, to get rid of this angle in both wrists. That's unnatural. So he ended up getting a strap that brought his instrument up a lot more, which straightened out both wrists. So he went from this almost right angle to this, and that helped him out a lot. So you might want to look at that. Way in the back.
Just also finger taps.
Finger tap.
What's the concept behind it? I'm trying to learn that now.
Sure. The concept of any technique is, the goal is to make music, not to learn a technique, right? That's the goal. The goal is to make music. And a lot of people forget that. Our goal is to learn a technique. And so it's like learning words and not having use for them yet. Right? You learn the words you need because you have something to say. That's how a little baby learns to talk. They want milk, so they learn milk quick. Right? They don't just learn big words for the sake of it. And a lot of us are learning techniques for the sake of it. So if you have music to play, that technique will come a whole lot easier, and the music will help you. But the other thing is that I say stop thinking of it like tapping, or else it'll sound like you're tapping. That's horrible, right? Press it down. Press it. All of a sudden, the note gets rounder, right? And all of a sudden, it sounds more like music. So that would be the key. Think of it like pressing rather than tapping. Right? A piano player doesn't go like this, like a typewriter. They press them down, and it sounds like music. So that's for me is the first start. And you play right-handed? Okay, if you want to learn how to tap with your right hand, tap with your left hand and notice how it does it. Your left hand will teach you everything you need to know. If I said with your left hand, play a C major scale, tap, you wouldn't go, right? With your thumb out in midair, and you wouldn't tap it. You go.
So he's offering an opposing force with his thumb.
Absolutely. You got to squeeze with your thumb. That's where the tone is coming from. It's hard to get tone without that thumb, without that opposing force. But I see so many people tapping without that opposing force. So you put your thumb back here and squeeze. Okay? So if my fingering is on a scale is 2 4 1 2 4 1 3 4 2 4 1 2 4 1 3 4, it's identical here. 2 4 1 2 4 1 3 4. So these hands become mirror images of each other, down to anchoring the thumb. If I'm going to play melodies and lines, I need to line up along the string, not vertically up and down this way. The same way this hand does. If I'm going to play scales or lines, the fingers are lined up down the string. If I'm going to play chords, then I turn them this way. Same here. If I'm going to play melodies or lines, I line up along the string. If I'm going to play chords, I may turn this way. Make sense? But basically, your left hand will teach everything your right hand needs to know.
So all the stuff you're already practicing with your left hand, just do the same things with your right hand.
And an easy thing you can do, if you play any chord, let's say G minor, right? I'm just really basic, it's a bar chord. One way that I start tapping is I take the 2 high notes of the chord and do my right hand with it, index, middle, and then I take the root down an octave. So this G minor to C7 becomes this. Then I can just move my hands 12 frets apart. Start adding rhythm. Get a little more complex. But the idea is to make music, not just learn a technique. Now, if I keep my hands 12 frets,
No, just one technique, right?
that's all the same technique, making it musical. Now, you don't have to keep your hands 12 frets apart, but that's a good place to start.
What do you feel is a key component in being tight with a drummer?
What do I feel is a key important in being tight with the drummer?
What's the word he's been using a lot?
Listening.
What's your instrument?
Drums.
Drums? Yeah, listening. Listening is the key, and not overplaying. Not overplaying. A lot of times as a bass player, we will overplay rather than simplify so that I can lock with the drummer. A lot of times we're playing too much, and if your timing is not that good on your own, and I'm overplaying, then I have a bunch of notes that I have to lock with the drummer. But if I just simplify my part and get those few notes locked with the drummer, the whole song will groove more.
One of the things I hate, I don't use that word a lot, but when I hear a drummer play with Victor the first time, they almost always try to match everything that he does.
I'm a very rhythmic player. Yeah.
And so they end up overplaying. And so if the bass player is really busy, it makes more sense for the drummer to simplify. And if the drummer is really busy, it makes more sense for the bass player to simplify. But a lot of times, from the excitement of playing with a Victor Wooten, your drummers will just try to match every triplet and every lick, and it just ends up being horrible.
And then it nullifies what I just did. It's like everything brilliant he says, I repeat it back to him. It doesn't make for good conversation. But for me, when I get really rhythmic, I'd rather you get straight, so you can hear what my rhythmic is playing on, rather than both of us getting rhythmic at the same time. And a couple of you have your instrument. Who's a bass player out there and wants to come up and play something? You got your instrument? We've met before somewhere, right? Yeah. Let me grab someone else. Who has their instrument, wants to come? Come on up. Yeah, you bring it on up. Quickly. Yeah. Just try a little something. Let's make sure. Oh, I know you. I know you. I didn't realize that was you sitting there. How are you doing, man? All right, we'll bring you up anyway. Or you can just take this chair. Take this chair. I didn't realize that was you. Can you get up this way? There's some stairs to your left over here. You can take Anthony's stool or mine. Good to see you, man. I didn't know that was you sitting there. Anthony's gonna give you a cake. You don't need to tune in, man. Look like this. We need to tune in. First, you hold it back.
Oh, I know. I've never seen a cable like that.
Play or something. What have you?
Nice, right? Yes. So, if we were to sit down to jam together, it would be hard to play with that because it's all the spaces are filled up. Even as great as that is, that's the kind of playing that will make me sit back and listen. But if I want to jam with him, that should be way emptied out. Okay, but that's not what I wanted to talk about. Think about your drummer, all right? What's your drummer's name that you play with?
Conti.
Conti. Imagine Conti's on this stage with us, and his drum kit is here, right? You'll probably feel the floor shaking. You might feel the wind from the cymbals. All right, and you just passed the bass playing test. You get an A+.
Right.
So now this is an imaginary test. I want to see how well you can imagine your drummer. Right. So I just want you to let Conti play first. I want you to put 100% of your attention on Conti, 0 attention on the bass, none. Again, you've already passed that test, so even if it comes out wrong, we will not lower your grade. This is now an imagination test. I want you to let Conti play first, and then when you're ready, you join Conti with no thinking on the bass, 100% attention on Conti whenever you're ready. Okay, let's stop for a second. What changed?
Space.
I didn't tell him to play anything different.
Yeah, more space.
Had a lot more space. The timing's metronome perfect, and all of a sudden we have a bass part. So that's how you lock with a drummer. You got to hear it, whether the drummer's really there or not. When you're listening, you will play the right part. If you're listening to yourself, you'll overplay it. So the first time you play the bass lick, a bass technique or whatever, and bass players will go, yeah, yeah, yeah. The bass players won't hire you, right? So you need to play in a way that other people who are looking for a bass player will hire you. The second way is the way. So all of a sudden, he's playing a part where I can hear the guitar part, I can hear where I can come in, I can hear a lyric right away. And all of a sudden, it's metronome perfect. So without telling him to play like a bass player, add space, lighten up your touch, quit banging on the bass, play in time, without telling him all that, I got him to do it by saying, listen to a drum. And it's really that simple. Listening is the key.
A funny thing I noticed, an anomaly with bass players and guitar players too. And when you walk in stores, great music stores like Allen Music, you walk in a store like this, you never hear a bass player play a song. You'll never walk into a piano store and not hear a pianist sit down and play a song. They don't get on the piano and just start exemplifying techniques. They play songs. But you hear a bass player pick up a song on bass in a music store, and they just offer up a technique as music. And like Victor said, they get a crowd of bass players around them, but what bass players want to hire another bass player? The keyboard players and the singers are running the other direction. But the bass players are running. So just be conscious that when you go in a music store and hear people play, and hear how little songs you actually hear people playing. And people want to hire you because of how well you play a song. Think about that.
So with that in mind, you remember the first thing you just played? The thumb thing? Okay, I want you to play that again, but following the same rules as before. Let Conti play first. And without even thinking of the bass, whenever you're ready, join Conti. Don't think of the bass. Don't think of the bass. Stop thinking about the bass. Keep going. Even if the bass comes out wrong, let it come out wrong. Put your attention on Conti. Keep your attention on Conti. Now, can you tell the difference in the feel?
Yeah.
That's how you lock with a drummer. You don't lock with a drummer by not listening to him. All right, so anytime I'm playing by myself, that's exactly what I'm doing. That's why my time is good. That's why, and it's not ego, it's a technique that I'm using. Regardless of what I'm playing or who I'm playing with, I hear that in my head even before I start playing. So I'm not creating music, I'm joining music.
Victor, isn't that the same thing that kids do with their imaginary friends?
If a kid is wanting to learn how to talk, right, we hear them imaginary talking. They're not, and we say, oh, he's talking to himself again. No, they're not. They're talking to someone else. And that's why they get better. If they were just talking to themselves, there would be no spaces in it, right? But they say something, they wait for a response, they answer it, and it's a real dialogue that's going on. So I use that same childlike technique when I'm playing. And you see what happens to it. Without practice, it's immediate. By listening to whoever you're communicating with, you'll play the right responses. And so right now that he's hearing Conti playing, he's not banging the bass so hard. All of a sudden, he's playing a bass line that fits with the song. It's not just a technical display. And all of a sudden, there's a groove that we can do this to rather than just sitting there with our jaw dropped listening. Now, I'm not saying get rid of the other side, but make sure that we know how to do this. What he's doing now is something that none of us practice. And this is what all the gigs want us to do.
And there is a difference between music store chops and playing in a band chops.
Yeah, or YouTube chops.
Or YouTube chops or Namco chops.
Right. Well done, my friend. Yes, sir, Mr. DR. With a, what is that, Coleman bass?
Yeah. Did you from your Virginia Beach?
Hampton. Wow. Hampton. Yeah. What's your name?
Funky Les.
Funky Les? You can take that two ways. So let's figure out which one it is. I already know. All right, Funky Les, play us something. Yeah, why'd you stop, man? Okay, stop. Great timing. This is our metronome. I'm going to count you in, okay? 1, 2, ready, go. Keep going. I'm going to talk, but keep going. So the metronome at first was on the downbeats. Now I put it on the ends. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One of the things that Anthony and I talk about a lot is we want to get musicians to understand the beat down to the 16th note. Okay, we should all be as comfortable with any division of a 16th note, which is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and. We want to know where those are. Okay, and most of us don't, especially those of us that only grew up listening to rock music and things like that. Because in a lot of the cases, those musics don't, what's the word? Don't really emphasize the 16th. Okay, so like the 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and, right? So now, stop for 1 second. Now listen to this: 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2, ready, go. So now we're back to the downbeat, right? It lets me know he doesn't quite totally 100% understand the 16th. We're back to the downbeat. Let me count you again. 1 E and a 2 E, not yet. 1, 2 E and a 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3. So we're 3 E. You got it. 1 E and a 2 E and a 2 E and a. It's kind of difficult. It's kind of difficult. But the thing is that even though we hear this, we should be just as comfortable with 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So no matter where the click is, we can still feel the time, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't rush. Don't rush. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 2. So now we're back to the off beat, right? So it's a tough one, right? But it kind of lets us know where our internal time was, and most of us only understand the beat down to the 8th note, 1 and 2 and, right? But a lot of ethnic musics, including funk, deals with those E's and the U's, right? So if I play a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I just go 1. That's not so funky, that's straight. But if I take one of these plucks and just saying, all of a sudden it starts to get funkier. Because I put 1 on the E, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and so the E's and the U's, just by entering into my pattern a few E's and U's, it starts to get funky. This is where a lot of ethnic music like funk or even Latin music will use more E's. They'll be pushing every beat. So in funk music, we can play the E and as a part of a pattern, right? But we want to get to where no matter where that click is, it's a good thing to practice. No matter where the click is, whether it's on any division of that 16th note, we can still play along, right? So forget that exercise. Let's just play something real quick. Whatever you want, I'll play with it.
Everybody wants fun.
Perfect solo.
Hitting the band the bass.
Next part again.
So listen to those octaves on the of the beat. Everybody wants fun. Everybody wants fun.
Thank you, Les. Les? Very, very nice. Yeah. So how did Les know to end? Yeah, we communicated. I just sent a subtle cue. He heard it right away, felt it, and we ended. Didn't have to say, here we go, Les. Right? It's a good musician right there.
I could tell that Les is the kind of bass player, you might hear him play a whole gig and never hear him take a solo. But he's just going to groove his ass off all night. I could tell he's that kind of player.
But for you younger folks.
Move your butt off, sorry. I don't curse in our lessons, do I? I still tell them that I don't curse.
Any other questions? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I thought you were looking at someone else. Sorry.
That's you.
Well, thanks a lot for coming out today.
You're welcome.
Earlier, on jamming etiquette, we were talking about bass players how it's important to maintain the groove while you go off and do something else. For players in the higher register, we're kind of bred to be the star. So what are some things that you've noticed those players tend to forget, or things you'd like to see them do?
Sure. As a horn, what's your instrument?
I play the violin.
Oh, violin. Okay. Well, let me talk about horn players. The general thing about horn players is that we always joke that they never stop playing.
Right. And they play loud.
And yeah. And if a group of horn players get together and they start coming up with horn parts in the background, they play them loud as if they're the main part. If you're on the top of the thing, it really depends on the style of music. Like, what kind of music do you like to play?
I like to play rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Blues.
Yeah, sure. So if it's a jam, I would say let the rhythm section set you up first. So if it's a blues or whatever, just let it go around a couple times and then come in with the lyric or with the melody or whatever. And I would also say start to, you probably already do it, but think in melodies. A lot of the times we're jamming and the upper person, like whether it's the horn, the violin, or the guitars, they just come in soloing, right? Rather than coming in with a melody. A lot of times the jam is more fun when we create a melody. And then the solo comes, and then we state that melody again, right? Because if there's somebody that's looking for a violinist for their record, they're going to recognize that more. That wow, I love that melody, right? A lot of people think we're going to get hired because you can solo. But even though that happens, that's more rare. Because it's rare that I'm really looking for a soloist for my song. Right? I'm looking for someone who can create that color, that melody, who can create that part. And so for people who are looking to hire musicians, I believe they're going to recognize that more. So as a higher instrument, the top instrument, melody instrument, I would say think in melodies, let the song go around first. Let the band set you up in the jam. State your melody, maybe solo, and then stop, right, to let the other people shine. The people, again, that play violin, guitar, of course, and horns they don't, in my opinion, don't leave enough space. They just play the whole time rather than stopping and letting the other instruments come through. But at the same time, being a good listener, think in forms of songs, right? A lot of times jams, we think in terms of jamming rather than thinking of jamming out a song. And a song has a part. There's an intro, then the melody comes in, and then there's a solo, and the melody comes back, and things like that. A lot of times jams are much more fun when we're thinking in those terms.
We just did a 3-week camp, and one of the classes is a jam, like a groove class, where we put them with some amazing musicians, and they have to treat it just like a jam. And basically what we're looking for, and the things that we suggest is, how can we make this band sound like it's a band that's been rehearsing? And melody is a large part of that, and structure and form.
Yeah, structure is a big part. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I get the question that you already know what to do. It's my.
If I do, I'm lost all the time.
Yeah. Well, when we get lost, a lot of the times the best thing to do is to stop right where we are and listen. And that's true with literally being lost. You know, you get lost in the woods, you stop. You stay where you are. You don't just keep walking. That's the thing that search and rescue will tell you. If you're lost, stay where you are, we'll find you. You keep walking, we'll find where you were. You keep walking, and we'll find where you were again. You know, or if you just stay right at one foot, we can track you, we can find you. You know, so music's not much different. You know, to the point where if Anthony's playing a bunch of chords and I don't know where they're going and I have to solo, I can stay on one note, and his chords will make it sound like my one note is changing. And because 7 of the 12 notes are always right, that one note will be right more than half the time.
I like those odds.
Great odds. Well, a lot of us are chasing the chords. I'm always a step behind, you know. And so for me, as when the chord changes are going by, and there's a lot of chords in a song, it's actually easier to solo over.
I mean, we kind of focus too much on letting notes or thinking notes has to be what your musicianship is about. And so much of communicating effectively are things other than notes or things other than words. It's dynamics and phrasing and articulation, what Richter refers to as 2 through 10, and I think of as emotional devices. It's those things. Like I always use this example. If I say, what color is your car? I created a tension, I went up in pitch. And your answer comes down in pitch, creates a resolution. My car is blue. If I say, what color is your car? And you go, my car is blue. That's the exact same word, but it's not communicating effectively. And the words didn't change, the notes didn't change, just all the other stuff, the prosodic cues changed. So we put so much emphasis on words. Just think about this. We've been listening to music that's about 2,000 years old, probably more than that. And every song that you've ever heard, no matter how big the band is, a 120-piece orchestra or duo, all of those songs, every part in all those songs are just made up of 12 notes. Think about that. Every song you've ever heard in the 2,000-year history of music, it's just 12 notes. So we get bent out of shape over the notes part of it, and that's the constant. That's the easy part. When Les bought that bass, that Fender Jazz, he already bought the notes that Jaco has. So when he says, I want to learn Jaco notes, I'm like, you bought those? That's the package deal right there. It's the other things, the dynamics and phrasing and articulation and space. That's what makes all of us sound different, which I think is a cool thing.
This is what also creates genres of music. Right? Notes don't make jazz different from bluegrass, different from reggae, different from funk, because it's still the same notes. Like I heard Anthony say, a C major 7 is the same in jazz as it is in R&B. That doesn't change. It's the other stuff that changes. And it's the other stuff that I wish we and music curriculum would pay more attention to. But it's the other stuff is what we tell you can't be taught. You know, I lump it all in the category of what's called groove. Because a C doesn't groove. Right? Neither does a D flat. You got to put it in, you got to add this other stuff to it to make that C danceable. And it's that other stuff that doesn't get taught.
Would you do me a favor and just play quarter notes on G, just all even?
Here?
Do me a favor, raise your hand if you know what time signature that is. Raise your hand. I can see one dude. Your hand shouldn't be up because it's not a defined time signature. Now let's add some dynamics on one of those notes, Victor. Now we're starting to doing things. So we got a time signature now. Raise your hand now if you think you know what a time signature is. So more hands can go up. But as long as he was just playing a straight note, you couldn't deduce anything from that.
Yeah, it's the other stuff. That's where the magic really is. There's magic in notes too, don't get me wrong. But the reason I don't talk about the note part of it is because all the teachers are talking about that much better than I can. It's important. And you should learn everything about notes, mode, scales, harmony, chords, reharmonization. Learn all of that stuff, right? But who's teaching what tone does? How do you make someone dance using tone, or what do rhythms mean, or articulation? How do you stop an audience from talking, right? It rarely depends on the note you play. How do you make a quiet audience more noisy? Right? If Anthony's not looking at me on stage, how do I get his attention without having to use my voice? right? If there's one person in the audience that I want to talk to, how do I get that one person's attention and no one else's? This is where music is really magical, and in a lot of the cases, it happens in the other parts of music. Like what Anthony was talking about, your tone of voice. Right? Your mom's talking about, don't use that tone of voice. You can say the same words a different way.
Yeah, I'll do my homework. Well, you better watch your tone.
Exactly. So the magic is in how you use things, how you articulate things. And that's the part of music that is, in my opinion, is under-taught and under-recognized. We just tell you got to go out and pay dues, meaning you got to learn the good stuff on your own. And I think the good stuff should be taught. And if it is, you become a great musician right away. And then music will grow and move and go further. And a lot of times it seems like music is stagnant. And we gravitate towards the people who take it in a new place. Where we could all be doing that. Not that we all should, but we all could.
One of our things that we do at camp that I love is we'll be having a discussion about improvising and creating bass lines and solos, which all falls under the category of improvisation. Remember that we're not talking about soloing, we're talking about improv. And every single musical line you've ever heard in your life started out as an improvisation.
Even if it was written.
Yeah.
It started out as improv.
Yeah, the bass line of Brick House didn't exist one day. And then it did, thank God. But it was an improv. It was an improv. So don't think that we're just talking about soloing, creating a line. So people start worried about all these 2 through 10 emotional devices. So what we do is we'll create a music bed around them and we'll give them one note or let them pick one note. And we always hope that it's a note that's not in the key. But we make them use the other 9 things that we've given them, like tone and articulation and phrasing and silence.
Listening.
And then they have to create an improv with one note. And then you start hearing a lot of interesting stuff. Different rhythms, different techniques, different dynamics and phrasing. And then once they get comfortable with that, we say, you got 11 other notes you can use now. And then the improv sounds totally different.
Right. Because they're not basing their whole improv off of the 12 notes. And that's the thing that inexperienced musicians will do. It's like trying to speak a language and you only know 12 words. You'll be frustrated. But even a less experienced musician will only pick the 7 notes that are in the key and try to speak this whole language with only 7 notes. And then us bass players can't play until we find that one note, the root, right? Rather than realizing that there's always 12 notes you can use.
And then they don't even search for that one note in a musical way. They forget that music is playing, then they just jumping around. And then they jump on, they find that one note, and then we move.
But the really experienced musician can use any note at any time because they know how to use the other things of music to make it work. And sometimes what we'll demonstrate at camp is that, or for a class, it doesn't just have to be at camp, we'll demonstrate sometimes how you can use nothing but the wrong notes and still make it work. And if you can do that, that lets you know that you are really in command of the other things, parts of music, other than just the right notes. Most of us have spent our whole musical lifetime on trying to find the right notes. And my goal is, no one ever told me I was a part of the note section of the band. They told me I was part of the rhythm section. So my goal is to find the right rhythm. And then even if I play the wrong note, it's going to be in the right rhythm and you'll still be able to dance to it, which means you won't hear it as a wrong note.
I'm having put his money where his mouth is. Give me that rhythm. Just a metric. It can be metronome or whatever.
What's the tempo?
About 100 beats per minute. So here's what I want you to do. I just want you to play chromatically descending from your high G, the 24th fret of the G string, to your open G on the same string. I just want you to improv descending and then ascending again. Now play something.
How many people practice scales? Great. It's good to do that. Here's the one scale no one practices. And I use no one loosely. If we practice the scale, it's usually just as an exercise, but we don't use it musically. Anthony's challenging me to use what we call the chromatic scale. Musically. When you learn the alphabet in a language, one of the first things they teach you are all the letters. You never skip any, right? But in music, we never teach you all of them and have you use them. Here's all of them. G.
Yep.
Let's make it even simpler. Straight quarter notes. Alright? So for those who say they can't solo or improvise, yes you can. It's just so easy, right? If we were to teach you that in school or in our classes, you wouldn't come back to that. You have a gig. No. It's really easy, but we teach you, you have to learn these 7 notes of each chord. You don't have to know any of that. You really don't. You just have to make it feel good, and then you can play something as simple as that. Because I don't know where he's going, I use every note possible, but I just make them feel good.
Hey Victor,
Yes.
let's do it walking.
Okay.
I'm
So.
make up.
Right.
It's not gonna be a song. I'm gonna be all.
You
over
want the
that.
same group?
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm the bass player. I'm not the soloist. I'm just gonna walk the chromatic scale. Like for me, music's all about how it feels. And to make sure I can play what it feels like, I'll play every note, or I'll do an exercise where I'll find the wrong notes and only play those, and see if I can make it feel so good that you don't know it's the wrong note. So right now, this is the chromatic scale, but I'm gonna walk it like jazz.
Yeah, jazz.
Same thing?
Yeah.
1, 2, ready, go. So right now, I'm not even trying to play the right note, just the feel. If I were really playing this song on stage, I'd be using my ear to figure out which one of these notes is right and what key I'm really in. See, that's the right one. So I know that more than half of these notes are right, wherever he goes.
What's making that work doesn't have anything to do with the notes. It's what we call 2 through 10. The dynamics. Every genre of music has its own set of 2 through 10.
And when he says 2 through 10, it's an exercise that we do that over years students have named 2 through 10 because we divide music up into 10 equal parts. We just say, what are 10 parts of music that are all equal to each other? 10 important parts. So one is notes, of course, and not because one is important, one is just one of them. But you can come up with anything: rhythm, technique, tone, articulation, phrasing, listening, space, feel, yeah. So we just come up with these things, and then the numbers, we put notes as number 1 because that's what we most of the time we think about it. In other words, Anthony said, hey, let's play this song. The first question would be, what key are we in? You know, for me as a challenge, I like not knowing. Right? I may not know on a gig. I want to know everything. But if I don't know, it doesn't mean I can't play. Because a dancer doesn't have to know, do they? To dance. Dancer doesn't have to know the key. They just let the music tell them. So I want to be just as good and as free as a dancer. So can I play without knowing the key? That's what I'm going for, and that's what we're doing right here. So as an exercise, we play without knowing what the notes are, so that we can work on our feel, our rhythm, our tone. Because again, as most of us in this room, except for that violin player,
Well, in a bluegrass band, she falls right in line with us. We are rhythm instruments, right? We are the rhythm section first, and I urge most of us to work on that. We are support instruments. Our job is to make other people play well so that you can be like Lee Sklar playing on 26,000 records, and no one ever asks him to solo, and he's happy about that. But that's why he got to play on 26,000 records, is because he knows how to make other people feel good. That's his #1 goal, is to make your song a hit. Right? He knows that the song is more important than just his part or his solo. Right? So that's one of the things we really want to work on. A few more questions. Anything else that we need to talk about?
I had a question.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm a bass player, I'm a harmonica player too. I just want 30 seconds with you.
Kick it off.
Kick it off?
Yeah.
All right, here, there.
Where? Anywhere. Sam,
Fast, slow.
you started.
Get this so my buddy can feel me.
Oh, so that's what this is really about.
It'll be on YouTube in about an hour.
Go for it. Yeah, exactly. So far we just have to sit there and listen, right? So far. So give us something we can play with. We want to play with you.
Right.
Now he's giving us something.
Yes. Yeah.
Very, very nice.
That was some good playing.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Uncle Clyde.
Uncle Clyde.
Nice.
You know, Reverend Harris?
Yeah.
Yeah. I played with him a couple times.
Nice. What else? Anything else before we go? Yes, sir.
So I'm an audience member. I have 3 musicians in my family.
Cool.
We talk about conversations with the audience. So as a single member of the audience, what's the best thing I can do to help you out?
To help us out?
Yeah, or to become a better part of that performance.
Absolutely. Be a good listener and respond when appropriate. Yeah, we love your feedback. When it's time to clap, clap. You know, but don't. I mean, there are some audience members, especially jazz. Jazz is, we celebrate how much we know in jazz. I know how to solo to these changes, so I'm just going to show you that I can do it, regardless of whether you know what I'm doing. I'm going to leave you behind and be happy that I'm leaving you behind. A lot of times it's like that in jazz. But sometimes we get listeners who also want to show how much they know. You know, and sometimes they can overdo it verbally or whatever, because we can tell from the stage they're trying to show how much they know. You know, But as a listener, it's good to know. I mean, I don't know that there's anything better for me on stage than to see someone singing the lyrics to my song. That's an unbelievable feeling, especially an obscure song. So I would urge us listeners, if we're going to go see a band, maybe do some research even. The same way you might, if you're going to date someone, you want to know everything about them. Especially if you're going to keep dating them, you want to know as much as possible about them. But I would urge that as a listener to know something about the band that you're going to listen to. But definitely respond. Give us energy. I was just in Africa recently, and I got a chance to hang out with these African Bushmen. And we got a chance, I'll try to make this fast, we got a chance to spend 2 nights with them as they did what they call their trance dance around the fire, where the women and some of the other, mostly women and the kids are singing and clapping around the fire. And the men are with their canes and rattles on their legs, and they're just marching and singing. And it's very energetic. And then there's a 80-something-year-old man who's the healer. He literally, will put his hands on people. But the healer, he says that he can't heal or feel enough spirit to heal until the people around the fire raise the energy enough. Mm-hmm. So I took that in the musical sense that, like, they're the band, he's the soloist. Where a lot of the times, as band members, we expect the soloist to just take it. Where we should energize that person, make it easy for them to solo. It doesn't mean by playing more, but creating energy. And the audience member can help do that also, and should help do that also. So I would say be a listener, but be an active listener.
And I want to say, first of all, we appreciate people who come out and support live music, because that's how we make our living. But we let people know that, we make our living in bars and clubs and smoky bars and clubs, and nobody in our band is smokers. So I'm not saying that you are, but a lot of times, like, we'll play a place in Denver and we might have to take a break just because there's so much cigarette and other kind of smoke now, that we can't do anything to set. So it's 2 hours of secondhand smoke is hard on a person's body and clothes and instrument. So, but I appreciate that you support live music and that you're supporting your family members.
And how many people here, remember that question, how many people here have kids? Right, so imagine you're at the playground with your kids and people come up and just start videotaping your kids. That would seem weird, right?
Yeah.
But you'll come to our shows and do it and not think twice. So our music is like us, it's like our family, it's like our kids, it's something that we have worked hard to raise and nurture and grow. But people will take it without asking. Not only take it, but reprint it, repost it, thinking that it's their right. So another thing you could do at a concert is not video it. I don't know many musicians who actually like it. Someone was just telling me yesterday, I forgot the musician who jumped off stage recently and just took a person's phone and threw it. A lot of musicians have started to walk off. Prince has you check your coat at the door, you also check your cell phone at the door for Prince. That's why you don't see any of Prince on YouTube. He has someone monitor and police it, and he will sue you if you don't take it down, so don't do it. But if you think about it, this is something that we have worked for forever, right? I've been playing about 47 years. Anthony probably just as long. This is what we do to feed our kids, right? People don't buy our records anymore, right? So we have to find new ways of making a living. Where at first we're musicians and recording artists. People not only record it, but they post it. I put out 2 records last year, Sword and Stone and Words and Tones. Within a week, both of those records are on YouTube.
Full record.
Both of them, 28 songs on YouTube for free. How can I feed my kids with that? So if you're like me, or my brothers, when we went to a concert, we would try to record it. Sometimes literally we'd sneak in, and record it. But the purpose was different. The purpose was to take it home and become better as musicians. We would study it. All these musicians that we talk about, we know Ralph Hedgepeth, Prince, we would all gather. Who's got the tape? You guys went to see Weather Report? Who got the tape? Let's learn. We'd be there with our instruments. We'd be studying it. It wasn't just to put it on YouTube and count the number of hits, get you to join my YouTube channel. That wasn't the reason. It was to become better for it. You know, so when we did sneak in a tape, yeah, maybe it was illegal, but the reasoning was different. Nowadays, I don't see people taking it home with their friends and getting better from it. It's just on YouTube that night, and you're cool because you get it up there. That part I don't appreciate. You know, so, you know, I really don't mind people videoing if they're going to use it, if they're going to use it to grow. And I say, if people are going to post what we do, post it in small pieces. Put it up there in a way that will entice other people to come and see the rest of it. But when you give away the whole concert, my whole record, why would someone buy it? And the person that suffers from it is us. So now I have to find new ways of feeding my kids. When in a lot of cases, this is the only skill I have. You know? So it's like pirating stuff. You know, other countries pirate things. You know, it's going to happen anyway. But to answer that question, to be a good listener, don't watch the show like this.
You should want, I would think that you would want somebody else to pay for the experience that you had. You're going to pay $30 for an experience and then give it away. It doesn't make sense to me. We did a show in Eugene, Oregon, and that night we saw the whole show on YouTube, and it was good. Like, we couldn't even stop looking at it. It was like, wow, that's a good show. The dude was at the balcony. It was centered. It was a high-definition camera. But why buy a $30 ticket to go see the Victor Wooten band? Because you can see the whole show, you know. And so it's just making it hard to make a living.
I do understand it, you know, and because of it, there's a good side and bad side of everything. I have fans in places I'll never visit because of it. But at the same time, there are gigs that are undersold for us musicians everywhere. There are people like Marcus Miller and Mike Stern that have to cancel tours because people aren't showing up anymore.
Marcus be asking us, how do we get such a big audience in America?
Literally. You know, so it's something to think about. One of the things of being a good fan is don't watch the show with a cell phone in front of your face. Watch the show and enjoy it. You know, and again, if you're going to video it, which I know people are going to do anyway, put it, and you're going to post it. We know that. We ask you to post it in small pieces, and then invite people to come see the rest. Because I agree with Anthony. If you paid for it, they should pay for it also. And it does help us.
And buy some merch. Buy some merch.
And we promise we won't show up at your job with our video camera.
Yeah, think about that though. It's funny, but think about that. You know,
think about whatever it is you do. If people just showed up with video cameras, you'd be saying what's going on. Probably call the cops. Yes, sir.
You're welcome to my job anytime.
What's your job?
I work at the Smithsonian up here on the bay.
So we can show up with our videos and what?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Y'all remember that.
But speaking of, learning about the band and what's going on at the show, what band you bringing to Baltimore Thursday, and what can I expect to see there?
Why would I tell you? If you're going to be there, you'll find out.
Educate?
Huh?
You just tell us to learn something before we come, so that's what I want to know.
Sure. You just learned and I ain't going to tell you. No, I have my brother Reggie on guitar, Derico Watson on drums, a great keyboard player named Carlton Taylor. He's from Bermuda, but not the island, from the triangle part of Bermuda. The triangle, right in the middle of the ocean. And Anthony.
Really cute bass player. And like I said, we like his playing so much that we renamed the band after him.
You may have to rename it that night. No, but yeah, that's who I'll have with me. And most of my family's actually on tour. This is a short run, only 3-day trip. So I was able to bring my wife and kids. But I couldn't bring my 13-year-old boy because he has a gig. He couldn't miss back at home. So, but, when my kids are there, I always put them to work. So they may sing or something. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So I was going to ask you this a little bit. My name's Ken Smith. I'm from Santa Barbara.
Your name is who?
Ken Smith.
Love your basis.
And another Ken Smith. But the question I have is, I live out in California, and same guys that you play with, and stuff like Scott Henderson and stuff like that. I asked the same question to him about a year ago. He says, I said, well, where is all this music going? Because everyone's getting it stuff for free and stuff. So what is this going to do to the future of music and actually to see live performances? Because it's really, California's a mecca, and that's tons and tons of talent. a lot of great musicians, and like I said, and their call having, no one seems to know where this thing's going to. Do you have any idea?
One thing I want to say just really fast.
Repeat that question.
Yeah, he just wants to know, because of technology, because it's changing so much, and where's this whole music thing going, especially with live performance? Because there's no model now of what being a successful musician is. There's no model of a record company. There's no tour support like it used to be in the '70s. So he's asking about where it's going. So one of the things I just want to say really fast about this whole YouTube thing, how it's affected what you guys as an audience member, how it's affected you guys negatively, is that we used to go out on tour and play songs that we would write at sound check. Because that's what we do a lot of writing on sound check. He wrote a song called Flex on a plane to Korea. We played it at sound check and played it that night. But now we can't play uncopyrighted material because it's going to show up online. So all the stuff that you used to get, like Prince would trial unrecorded music, all these Dave Matthews, all these bands would trial stuff that they hadn't started recording yet, because it's a cool thing to do for an audience, and the audience members could go home saying, man, he played this song that's not on any record yet. And then you would listen for a year later and knowing you get to hear how it evolved. But you're never going to hear that anymore. Never. Because people are going to post it.
True. That was Inflectone's life. Beta Fleck and Inflectones. We would play songs for a year. And so by the time we got into the studio, we knew it had evolved, and we would record it. It would spend less money because we didn't have to take much time. Now we learn our songs in the studio, and we have to spend more money and more hours because we have to play the song enough till that it feels like it went through that year's worth of evolution, and now we're ready to record. So we'll literally play songs 25, 30 times and record each one, because sometimes it's nice the first time. That's where the freshness, the newness is. But then when we record it, and a lot of times we end up editing versions together. And Anthony's right about that. And I can't say what's good or what's bad, because everything's an evolution. We've evolved to where our parents, from where our parents came from, and theirs too. But where the music is going is in these young kids' hands. We should be asking them. I don't know. I really don't know. I just have to figure out now where I fit in with where it is. And what I found is that fans right now the younger fans that are growing up, we're used to hearing MP3s. We're used to hearing everything pitch corrected and quantized. So in my mind, we're not even getting what I would call real music, unless we go see the concert.
Yeah. It seems like almost like you got so much technology out here that people are getting false indicators that they think have achieved great musicianship, and they really don't have it. And the question is, with the instruments, with the technology that's out there, they can make somebody who's terrible. Seems kind of...
Well, you can make someone that is terrible sound good, and it happens all the time, and we celebrate that also. But our parents probably say the same thing about us. It used to be, even before records, you wanted to hear music, you had to go hear somebody play it.
Right.
But then records came out, so I'm sure there were some people that hated that. And then video, and then, so everything's an evolution. So I'm not here to say that the tool is bad, but what can we do with it? And I also believe that things go in cycles. I also know that there's nothing that can take the place of talent.
Right. That's exactly what I was getting ready to say, because I talked to, I read the history like James Jamerson and how he felt when he was coming up. He was never treated like this. And then I just sat back and I figured this out about a month and a half ago. It doesn't seem talent is always going to surface.
Yeah,
it's rise to the top. And I figured out also, maybe in this time period he'd never recognized the talent that it was at the time.
Jamerson?
But later on in history will reflect that everybody who plays the bass right now pretty much know who James Jamerson is.
Knows Jamerson,
right?
Yeah.
And in respect to what he contributed to the bass. Mm-hmm. And I try to tell people, because some of the young ones that I see come in contact, they think that they're going to be superstars. And so you may be long, you could be 50 years after you're gone. I've seen tons and tons of great talented, like Donald Byrd and stuff like this. He's never got recognized to be in the stratosphere as a musician, but he was a great one. And the spectrum of music that he's done was fantastic. You know what I'm saying? That's what I kind of like has come to a conclusion that you see it's kind of like evolving that way, and people got to really stop and sit back and observe that.
Yeah, I just think it's important to support live art.
Absolutely.
And you know, we talk about the music business, but there's art businesses that are hurting more than we are. You know, the theater, improv, comedy in general, art. You know, when the last time anybody here went to the art museum? You know, but there's painters out there, good ones that, you know. So there's, you know, I just say if we want to see it thrive, we have to do it. Don't wait for the next person. So, you know, go to concerts. You don't have to know who the band is, right? Support art. You know, we complain about them taking art out of schools and music out of schools, but then we won't go pay to see a band. Especially us musicians, especially successful musicians, just want to get on the guest list. We don't expect to pay. That's horrible. So we have to support it.
Musicians are the worst at listening to other musicians.
Absolutely. Very, very true. So anyway, we can make it thrive. But I also do believe in it's a cycle. Yes, sir. Good question.
Have you ever seen a film, or do you have a favorite film style? Coming as a filmmaker, you just mentioned painting. Have you ever seen a film where you apply your approach to music in the film, and you're like, wow, they're doing music artistically what I'm doing music?
I think for any film to be successful, well, let me put it this way. I apply my playing to the same approach to telling a good story. To telling even you know, and a film is even has the more ability of telling a great story because it gets to attack you on you. It gets to not attack, but you get to experience on more than just the storyline. You get to see it and everything. But like, let's take an action film. I don't know if I'm going to answer your question, but if we take an action film, it may start with a great action scene, but if it stays great action the whole way through, you'll walk out. There's no, who said that? There's no dynamics to it. Absolutely. So I want to approach my show the same way. I even want to approach my solo, my career, you know. So there has to be the dynamics of ups and downs. I may start a show with a flashing line, but then I back it off, play some melodic, then I get soft, I break the band down, and then we build it up before the end, just like a good movie. So for me, a good movie is following a good musical format, or vice versa. They're really one and the same, where to keep someone's attention, there has to be dynamics. You know, in a good movie, after that first opening scene, if it's really dynamic, the more dynamic the beginning of The Matrix is, it has to get almost that boring afterwards. They have to get really soft and set up the plot. And somehow you got to see that love interest, and they kind of almost kiss, and you know, all that stuff. But then it's got to come back up. You know, it needs to have that dynamics for it to have, you know, keep the attention. So I don't know if I'm seeing the music in the movie, that formula, but I'm definitely copying that movie formula in my approach to playing. Yes, sir.
Of course, with today's technology, things have changed with your range of different kinds of genres that you've worked in. Okay? My vision is you go into the studio and you're doing a recording, like a pop recording, and the rhythm section is done like live, and the other instruments come in.
So in the studio, the rhythm section done live.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And with jazz or fusion type things.
With jazz or fusion.
I always envision that you must have your parts written out ahead of time. How are they different? How do they really
right. In
look?
jazz or fusion, they may write the melodies out, but the rest is improvised most of the time. They may have the chord changes out, and the melody may be verbatim. Play this melody, but it's rare that the bass line is going to be written out, or the the guitar part or the piano part. If anything, it's just the chord changes and the melody, and the rest is improvised. That's what makes it jazz.
If you were lucky enough to hear the 5 different takes of a recording, it'll probably sound almost like 5 different songs.
Yeah, I just recently got a chance to hear the outtakes from John Coltrane's Giant Steps. And man, it was amazing. The different solos were all different, and you could hear him kind of getting the ideas together. And they were all good. And then he'd be soloing, just blowing, and he'd make a mistake he didn't like and stop it. And we were like, man, that was killing, man. Why'd you stop, you know? But they're all different. It's totally improvised. I've heard it say that a good solo sounds composed, and good composition sounds improvised. Right? I listened to Charlie Parker solo through Donna Lee or Train soloing through Giant Step. It sounds like a composition. That's why we all go back and learn it. But then I hear Jocko solo over Havana, and it sounds improvised, but it was composed.
And for you guys, for you that didn't know, Jocko wasn't an improviser at all. All of his bass solos were composed. And that kind of probably put some people off in the beginning. But when you think of them as a composition, now it's like, that's amazing.
But composition is improvising. It's improvising in slow motion. Jocko, in other words, if he were to solo over Havana, which is one of his, in my opinion, one of the greatest solos, more than likely it would be the same solo over again. He figured it out and learned it, and he would take that solo. But man, if you can do that, do it. Take the time to get it right, you know, before the record. Write it out if you have to, so that the one that goes down for all of history is like the best possible choice, and that's what Jocko would do, you know. And for me, nothing wrong with that. I think it was my friend Edgar Meyer that said composition is like improvising in slow motion. Now you're still making it up, you know. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If you want to speak about the campus a little.
Yeah, good question. I'll let Anthony do it.
Michael's
talking about the camps.
Michael came in from Slovakia and attended one of the camps. I see Al English, George, and I see people here from the camp. The camp is a big deal. I see Matt Coon back there, another camp.
Matt, how many students you have here?
I see his son who needs a haircut. How many, Matt? Sorry.
3 students and Scott.
Is that Scott Griffin?
Hey, man.
See what I'm wearing, right? Man, I had a hat like this that I wore to the ground, literally just frayed. And I was at camp about a week ago, and one showed up in the mail. And it fit, because I got a big head, and this one fit perfectly. And I got there, Scott Griffin found it online and shipped it to me. Amazing. Thank you so much.
I've been lucky enough. We're about the same age. Victor turns 50 in about a month. I turn 50 next May. So we're about the same age. So we're contemporaries, but in a lot of ways, I look at my relationship with Victor as an apprenticeship. I've been really fortunate to have this 20-year apprenticeship that I've learned about recording and teaching and touring under the instructor. And I noticed that apprenticeship is what's missing. All great instrument makers and all great musicians growing up had apprentices and masters, and we're losing that. That's one of the reasons why I love to teach, to offer an apprenticeship in a way. And so Victor, I think what Victor did was amazing. He went out and bought 150 acres to offer that kind of apprenticeship. And for me, that's amazing, because I don't know what his financial status is, but I know the camp costs $1 gazillion. And I always tell people, think of all of your music heroes. Just think of 3 of them. And then think about how many of them took their $1 million and bought 150 acres to teach. He could have bought his family a house in Costa Rica. He could have bought a Ferrari, which I was trying to encourage him to do. But he said, no, I want to teach. And I just think, and nobody's recording so I can say this, Marcus didn't do that. Stevie Wonder didn't do that. Elton John didn't do that. Victor Wooten did that. He took his $1 million and he bought 150 acres to teach. And he did that because the campsite we were using before will only let us use it twice a year. But so he can teach it, have 9 camps or 100 camps a year. He put his money where his mouth is. Think about that. He put the best out. So, thanks for bringing that up, Michael. It's a big deal to me because, you know, so much of what I know about music and musicianship and playing, I've learned under his, under the tutelage of him. So it's good to see that it's going to keep being passed on. And we offer all kinds of camps. people think we're just doing bass camps, but we do an all instruments camp. We do a junior camp that's all instruments for kids, yeah. And we do a theory weekend. We do a spirit of the music camp where they go into stuff that we try not to go into in regular camps. We do jam weekends because, like you said earlier, one of the things that's missing is people don't get together and jam, and that's how we both learn how to play. So he offers that, and his dream is to have that camp going every day, 24 hours a day. And I just think that's amazing. So we don't want to lose the momentum. You know, we ask people to, you know, to donate money so we can build structures that people can sleep in. We want to be able to accommodate 60 people sleeping. So we're always trying to have building weekends and get people to donate. And we're trying to keep the camps full. So do me a favor, if you guys, how many people here have Facebook pages? Do me a favor, go to victorwooten.com and go to the navigation tool and click on the camps, or go to VIX camps, spelled VIX.com, and there's a schedule for all the camps. We have a Spirit of Music camp coming up next month and a music theory camp. So if you guys can just post that on your Facebook page and tell people to check it out and have your friends share it, it'll help us to keep the enrollment up. Stan is an alumni of the camp. You come to theory, right?
Yeah, but I just wanted to say that it's not just for like young people like that. Old people like me.
How old are you, Stan?
64.
And Stan, I love Stan because you almost died recently. And I just saw you in Nashville at a camp. And do me a favor, hold up your hand. The reason why I like him to hold up his hand because people say, man, I can't get my fingers to move right. I can't play bass. And I say, you need to check out.
That's naturally bent, right? I mean, can you straighten that finger?
Oh, no, that's
right.
from that was a war injury.
And you still play music, right? When the music's in you, nothing's going to stop you from playing. So when I see someone like Stan almost die, got a messed up hand, I say, what's my excuse?
Right, exactly. And how old are you, Stan? 64. He's older than electric bass. When Stan was 1 year old, he didn't hear any music with electric bass on it. Think about that. And he's 64, and he's signed up for camp. We'll see him at theory camp. I hear 20-year-olds talking about, I'm scared to learn theory. Even, you know, more from older people. But Stan is 64, and he's coming to learn. I think that's awesome, man. I think you're a great example.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Michael, asking about the camps, because I always forget to talk about, as well as I travel for Harkey doing this, I forget to talk about them. So before we get out of here, let me tell you about Harkey. And it's a blessing that I forget, and I'll explain that in a minute. But really, we look at things differently at our camps. We're not a camp that's for everyone. I will say that. But if you want to, excuse me.
Sorry, Floyd was at camp.
Yeah.
I was the one that froze. Remember?
Yeah, you froze on stage.
And everybody laughed at me.
You thought you were doing a robot.
But if you're into looking at things, you know, in a new way, it may be something for you. We're out in the woods, we're secluded, and we get in it deeply. We just did a 3-week camp, and I'm there 24/7 for 3 weeks.
And we had people from Australia, Germany, Norway, Mexico, France, New Jersey.
But, you know, like, I don't know anyone that's ever made music theory any easier than Anthony. You know, all the key signatures, circle of fifths, things has always confused the best of us. And Anthony has just re-looked at that whole thing. Yeah, I always call it the Wellington method, because I believe that's what it'll become known as. You know, like in upright bass, we have the Samando method. You know, we have what's my girl playing on violin? My daughter's playing Suzuki method. You know, I believe there'll be something called the Wellington method if things go well, because he's just simplified. You know, if you can add up to 7, 3 + 4 = 7, 5 + 2, you can tell any key signature. It's that simple. It really is that simple. Playing music is a lot simpler than it seems. We are all musical. If you are 10 years old, that means you've been listening to music for at least 10 years. So why I would start this person off as a beginner is beyond me. We don't do that. You might be a beginner learning your instrument, but you're not a beginner in music. We just need to take all you know and put it through this instrument. And once we help you realize that you know already, playing music is easy. That's why every kid can play an air guitar. That's why every female or male who doesn't know anything about music can sing in the shower or on their way to work. Right? You're not singing to be right. Right? You're singing because it feels right. When we approach playing an instrument that way, it becomes a whole lot easier and a whole lot more fun. And there are people that jump on us for saying this. They say, no, it's not supposed to be easy. You know, you're supposed to do what your teacher says. It's my way or the highway and all this kind of stuff.
Some people say try harder. We say
try easier. Absolutely. Try easier. Yeah. So, you know, it's just, music is fun.
At the camps, and all of our teaching styles are so different. Like Victor's teaching style is very organic. My teaching style is very fundamentally based in mathematics. And like for me, this bass has 125 notes on it. They're 11 Gs. That makes it concrete. I was talking to Les, if you don't mind me embarrassing you. He came to a clinic of mine in Virginia Beach a couple of months ago, and he talked about not knowing the notes on the bass. So I said, do you have a college degree? And he said, yes, and your college degree is in physics. I said, hold up, you got a physics degree in 4 years, and you're trying to tell me that knowing the notes on the bass is harder to get a fit. So you got to put things in perspective. You already know something harder. The notes aren't jumping around. The 20th fret of the A string will be an F. 63 years ago was an F. 63 years from now will be an F. You don't need physics. I'm a quarter as smart as you are, and I know all the notes on the bass simply because they're not jumping around. You know?
It really is that simple. And regardless of what F you play, we can make it feel good. If you can dance to music, you should be able to play music. Right? As soon as everybody can dance, a baby is born knowing how to dance. But if we say you have to dance right, now we have a context we put it in. And that's where it gets hard. Right? But let's just start by playing. That's the kid playing air guitar. You know, like Anthony likes to point out, you will never see someone play air guitar without a smile on their face. If we ask one of you right now to stand up and play air guitar, you're going to start smiling. You will, right? So a lot of the times we just have to bring that back to the student. And when we can get that back, good music has no choice but to come out. And to sound as good as anybody, most of you would not believe how easy it is. How easy it really is. It's just a few little things that we can show you, and we've done it with beginners.
I mean, experiment.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when he came up and played, that was easy because he could play the harmonica. But this woman brought her son to a clinic. She didn't know anything about music, and we tried to find the least person with the least experience in the audience.
Who never played anything.
And we got on stage, and
we got the mom on stage to play. And basically, we surrounded her with music. Anthony started playing a thing and put on the drum machine. Her neck started doing like that. And we're like, right there, that's music. That's where your neck is. There's no music on this instrument, right? Listen, you know, it makes no sound.
That's a $15,000 bass, by the way, and that's how it sounds.
It sounds just like every other one in here. Literally, they don't make any sound. You got to put it there. So we convinced her to put that neck motion into one note on the instrument, and she made that one note dance. We surrounded her with the rest. And if you were to walk into the room, you would not know who was the beginner. Right? And then we get with a few other directions. We had her change strings. All of a sudden, we're going to the 4-chord, the bridge, go up a whole step, go on the 5-chord. It's really easier than we think.
She gigged the next day.
It's really easier than we think. Now, we can go as deep and as complicated as you want. But we want to start with you just making music. You know, that's why we have our theory 3-day classes and other classes. If you want to really get deep, we're ready for that.
Seba from Australia, in the closing ceremonies, he said, and it made me feel good. He said, and he's a teacher. He said, he learned more in 1 hour than he learned in the last 5 years.
4 or 5 years of school. Yeah. And I'm not trying to brag or boast. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be as hard as most of us make it and that you think it is. We're just talking seven letters. Musical alphabet has 7 letters.
Always in order.
A to G. Right. A to G. And only 12 notes. Right. To read music, we're talking about 5 lines and 4 spaces. And only a few rhythms you'll ever see, especially as a bassist. Right? There's only a few rhythms you'll ever see. It rarely goes any faster than the 16th note. The notes on this instrument never change. Right? It's not like 63 years ago they were different.
Right.
Or tomorrow they're going to be scrambled and you got to guess again. They never change.
So we say, honestly, this is going to sound kind of harsh, but we say if you don't know the notes on your bass, it's a discipline problem.
That's all it is.
That's all it is. It's a discipline problem.
Or reading music.
You just got to own up to that.
Yeah, learning to read music is a discipline. But if you can't read music, you're losing gauge you don't even know about. And there's people who can't play half as well as you getting those gauges just because they can read. So learn to do it. You can learn to read music in a day. 7 letters. You can learn it in a day. You may not be good at it in a day, but you'll know how to do it. The rest is practice. Repetition, doing it. Writing music will double the speed at how quickly you can read it.
That's how I taught myself how to read. I just started writing out stuff that I made up. And it's impossible, think about this in English, it's impossible to write a sentence out in English that you can't read. So I use that same concept to teach myself how to read music.
Yeah. Any other questions before we get out of here? So really quickly, I forget to talk about Harkey all the time. What's the question?
I was going to say.
So I'm psychic. No, I'm just kidding. I forget to talk about Harkey, and here's the reason. I'm a better musician. I'm more musical inside. Music for me exists in my mind, in my head, in my heart. And what I hear, to get you to hear it, I have to try to represent it or imitate it or whatever. And it rarely comes out exactly like I hear. It's like talking. It's hard to find the words to your sentiment sometimes. So if you could hear what I hear in my head or feel what I feel, it'd be much easier and it'd be much better. But because I can't, I need a 4-string fretted bass. That's the closest representation I can get. It's a tool that I'm most comfortable with showing you, letting you hear my music.
So you can play other ones, but that one.
Yeah, exactly. I can play other instruments, but this is the one that allows me to be the most musical, to paint a picture of what I feel inside. But if I just play electric bass, it feels like that. I mean, or sounds like that, and you guys can't really hear it. Now I need amplification. So when I have amplification, right? When it's amplifying.
Is it possible for you to play anything bad? Sometimes we're at camp and Victor start imitating a bad musician. It's the funniest.
Yeah. But for you to hear my musicality, I need amplification. And when the amplifier is amplifying as closely as possible what I'm hearing in my head, if it's doing a good job and amplifying what I hear in my head, I forget it's there because I'm just really living in my mind, in my body. You know, when the bass is responding and the amp is amplifying what the bass and what I'm doing, I forget the amp is even behind me. And so I forget to talk about it. That's beautiful that I forget it's there. If the amp didn't sound good, it'd be pulling me away. It's like trying to talk with a sore lip or you just got a tooth pulled. That pain makes it even hard to talk. And I'd be back here adjusting all the time, and it would be hard to play good music. So the fact that I forget it's there, to me, is beautiful. For Harkey, it's not so good. But for me, it's a blessing that I forget it's there. But since I'm remembering right now, I'll just let you know this is the exact same rig, the same type of rig that I'll be playing tonight. And it's a high drive cabinet. It's what's called a high drive. Harkey years ago became famous for making aluminum speakers. Speakers were made out of complete aluminum. And I'll tell you straightforward what just happened there. Oh, there's a button on. I got it. It's an on and off button. I didn't like the all aluminum speakers. They didn't sound that good to me. They're very harsh for what I was looking for. So I never used them, but sometimes when you go and you rent gear, you always have to use them. So I was familiar with them. But these are half paper and half aluminum. Most cones or speakers are made out of paper. And this to me is the best of both worlds. They're half aluminum and they're half paper, so they have a unique sound. And that's why they call it a high drive. They're like a hybrid. So this top cabinet is 4 10-inch speakers. That's high drive speakers. and then a horn in the middle. The bottom is a high drive 15-inch speaker with a horn. I think it's up here behind this piece. Oh yeah, up here in this corner. So they both have a horn with an attenuator switch on the back, so you can add more horn or shut the horn off. And so it's a unique sound, different sound. So you can get the top and the bottom. This head is a LH1000, Larry Harkey 1000. It's 1,000 watts. 1,000 watt heads, not too heavy. Only 5 knobs. I think I know what 4 of them do. But it's very, very easy to use. Sounds good, and it's not that expensive. That's one of the best things. It's not that heavy. The cabinets are light, and the whole thing is not that expensive. But for the last maybe 3 years now, I've been using that. Anthony and I, when we were touring, I had just left another speaker company, which I still love. I just was ready for a change after about maybe 12 years of using them. I just like change. And so I spent a year looking for new gear. And Anthony we were on tour together at the time, and companies were just sending us stuff to use. And one tour we had
25 bass rigs in the trailer.
25 different bass rigs.
And we were lucky because our crew guys were excited about that. And every night they would just surprise us. I wouldn't know what they was going to set up for me. He didn't know what they were going to set up for him.
Right. And so we got to try just a bunch of stuff. But the cool thing is that, in my opinion, I think I can speak for Anthony here, bass gear has gotten so much better.
They all.
Yeah, it's like everything sounded good. So for me, I chose maybe my top 5. What I started by sound, and then there's a few criteria that I look for when I'm going to endorse a company. And one is sound. That's where it started. But the size of the company matters to me. Because if I go to Istanbul, Turkey, can I get the rig that I use? Another thing is, can you afford the rig that I use? I don't want to be playing something and endorsing in magazines something that you can't afford. What's the use? So that's another one. I also love to do clinics. I wanted a company that would allow me to do clinics. And I also wanted a company that would support the camps that I use. And the most important, but usually my last thing is I want to meet the people who run the company. So like a marriage, if we're going to be in a relationship together, I want to know who you are, and I want you to know who I am. So there were some companies that I loved all their gear, but I didn't really want to, be on the phone every week with this person or those people, or they didn't treat their employees in a way that I felt happy representing.
Or they wanted to tell you how to use their gear. They would actually come up on stage and adjust your gear.
Oh man, I want to punch that to you.
You're talking about some of the best bass.
I wish I was joking. I hate feeling that way. But you're up there playing, and then there's a guy coming up making an adjustment. I'm like, dude, you're in my house.
A worse story than that. We were in New York, and I was talking to an amp company that were really interested in me. And he came up to the conversation we had, and he told the guy at the other amp company to close his ears so he could say something bad to him while he was bad about him while he was standing there.
Yeah, it was one amp company, was looking for Anthony, but Anthony was talking to another company, right? So the dude that walked up told the guy from the other company to close his ears so he could say something bad about him. Now, how in the world, why would we represent you if that's your mode of operation?
It's a vote.
And the gear is good.
It's great.
Right? I mean, if you play through it, for one, you'll know who we're talking about, and you'll like the gear. But there's no way I'm going to put my name on it. No, So in the end, I'm sorry.
So you're endorsing that company's behavior.
You're endorsing people.
People. You got to be conscious of that.
Right.
You're voting. Every time you make a purchase, you're voting for something.
Exactly. You got a Nirvana shirt on, you're endorsing Nirvana. Not that it's good or bad, but we need to be conscious of that. People tell me all the time, man, did you vote? I'm always voting.
Every time you buy something.
Everything you do is a vote for something. So be conscious of how we act. Anyway, in the end, Harkey was a clear winner. No question. My first SMV tour with Stanley and Marcus, I didn't even endorse Harkey, but they made sure there was a rig there for me. Every gig around the world. That said a lot. And the president of Harkey is an amazing bass player, Jack Knight. Really, really good player and just the sweetest guy. And so anyway, that's my outlook on gear.
I'm endorsed by another company, but I have to sing Harkey's praises. They sent us out on clinic tours. They got me hotel rooms, even though I'm endorsed by other people. I really appreciate that they outfit them and their parent company, Samson. They outfit the camp a lot. And there was a time in a couple of baseball magazines where Larry Harkey actually put his cell phone number in the print ad. And people thought it was a lie. They would call and say, "This is Larry." I think it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, Larry's crazy, you know, and I like crazy. Crazy just means not normal. And I say if the world is run by normal people, right, I like crazy. So Larry's a guy that I wanted to meet, you know, because I'd heard about him. But like Anthony uses Aguilar. I love Aguilar. They sound wonderful. And Aguilar was one of my top choices. But Aguilar, especially at the time, was too small of a company. They can't ship gear here, there. They don't have manufacturers over there. You know, Harkey is owned by Samson. Samson microphones and all that kind of stuff. So they have a larger parent company. And that was one of the things that made it easier. But I love, is it Dave?
Dave, Venus and Boonshaw.
Yeah, good guys, you know. But it's not just about getting free gear, for me anyway. And also, you know, like Fodera, when I got my first Fodera, it was $900. Who couldn't afford that? But now this bass costs whatever.
It's 15 grand, and Victor had an issue with that, so he made them make a cheaper version that's a third of that price that looks exactly like that bass. I mean, because it's still an expensive bass, but a lot of people are buying basses in that price range. He just wanted his name attached to something that people could play, and I think that's pretty cool. And another thing that Victor did that was really, really cool that you never see, you know, we took 10 or 11 people out on a tour, and all of us are endorsed by various companies. And Victor said, "I got an idea. We're going to do an ad in Bass Player magazine with all of the companies in this ad." And it was just groundbreaking. To us, it was a no-brainer, but it was nobody had ever done that. And so all of our companies, Aguilar, Harkey, string companies, different string companies, drum companies, everybody pitched in. We did this ad. Everybody except for one drum company. They were jerks. Yeah. They probably regretting it now, but it's such a groundbreaking idea. They're not in competition with each other. They just want to. I'm not, just like musicians. I'm not in competition with them. As good a bass player as he is, he can play at the Birchmere tonight, but he can't play at the Birchmere and here and Iota and the Colony South. He can't do all of those gigs. So we're not in competition. We got to stop thinking that we're competing with each other. That's why I got out of athletics, because it doesn't have to be any winners or losers.
Right, and as good as I might be able to play, I can't express Anthony's sentiment better than he can. He's the best at that, you know? So everybody has something to say, and you're the only one who can say it.
Come here, Sheila.
Oh, Sheila. There's only a handful of people in this room that know what I just said.
I heard it on the way here. They played on Sirius a lot. Ready for the World. I don't get to see my sister a lot, so I'm just gonna.
Hey, Vic.
Gary, what kind of shoes you got on?
You know me. How you doing?
She's a competitive bodybuilder and triathlete and all-around crazy girl.
You're taller than she is.
She's 4'11", and probably out bench press all of us.
I'm 4'10",
4'10",
and very proud.
If we were on a basketball team together, I'd be like the center. I'm 5'4".
Hey, both of you guys like either bodybuild and do jujitsu and all that stuff, right? Right.
And how old are you, Sheila?
48.
You just turned 48 last month.
48, really?
And how old are you, Gene? 54. Wow, man. I hope I look that good when I'm 54.
So I see a lot of guys looking, but there's a strong dude that'll wear you out.
Actually, two strong dudes that'll wear you out.
Anyway, we love doing this.
We go all day.
Yeah, literally, we love talking about music. I realize I didn't play a whole lot, but the show is tonight at the Birchmere. Where, thank you. We will play a lot there, and it'll be a whole lot better than what we could do here. We both have websites. Anthony teaches. I'm sure most of you know Anthony teaches right around this area.
And look for me here soon.
At
So
the store,
I'm
right?
forging a relationship with Island Music. So we'll get to have a lot more of these clinics, and I can drag Victor out at any point. So really quick about Island Music. I mean, for me, it's the best music store in Southern Maryland. And I always tell people, make sure you support local stores because we're going to miss them when they're gone. A lot of big box stores are putting smaller stores out of business, and we just don't get the same service. If they hire the same people, the big box stores hire from the same pool that McDonald's does. You know, so I'd rather they talk to somebody about an instrument who actually knows about that instrument. So stores like this, we need to keep them around. We need to keep them. They need to survive. So support local music stores as much as you can. And Keith and his wife, they got a great thing happening here. So keep supporting this store.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have another store that's your favorite, just to say thanks for doing this, you know, make an extra stop here. Even if it's as little as a guitar pick, you know, make an extra stop so that stores like this can keep doing what they do. And we really do appreciate your Island Music. Thank you very, very much for putting on something like that.
I see you, Terry Day.
So we do have to get to sound check. Are there any other questions that we didn't get to before we get out of here?
Your ears.
Oh, the ears.
Yeah.
Yes. What was the part about the
protection?
ears? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, I have great answers. I just don't follow advice.
One answer I heard him say he can't say in front of kids.
Oh, that's true.
About using protection.
Yeah, but hopefully the people who don't need to know what we're talking about don't understand it. But for me, you should use some type of ear protection. Just especially if you're just starting out like these young folks, get in the habit of using ear protection.
There's a learning curve.
Use earplugs. I never did it as a kid, and I have a hard time doing it now. When I try to play, I can get through half of a song with earplugs in, and I have to pull them out. But I'm suffering because of it. I have a constant ringing in my ear. In my right ear is a lot worse than in my left ear. And I think I still have good hearing. I think I do. But I do notice that in a crowd, there's a certain frequency in the middle that I lose if someone's talking to me. But man, if you could do anything to train yourselves to use ear protection, please do it. Please do it. I didn't do it, and I'm not positive that I will do it. But I will say something that I do, and as strange as this may sound, I just pray that it works. A lot of the times I'll put earplugs in after the gig, just to give my ears a break. It's almost like maybe resting after lifting weights. You let your ears, your muscles rest. I don't know if it does anything, but I just think maybe that the thought and attention and the care and the thankfulness of my ears, that I'll say, look, I'm just doing this for you. I'm giving you a break. You know, I know I just wore you out. You know, whether it works or not, I don't know. But that is something that I still to this day do. But if you can get, especially when you go, even, or not especially, but even when you go hear a concert, you know, protect your ears. Really do it. Protect your ears.
Victor wants us to play a song now, but I actually really want to hear this song that he does called The Lesson, and you guys really need to hear him play the way that he didn't play in the beginning because he was trying not to embarrass me. So I'm gonna step aside and let him do that song because I want to hear it too. But let's put our hands together and thank this man for coming all the way down to Southern Maryland. Do this for Victor Wooten.
Hey, if you guys could give one word to describe music, any word of your choosing to describe music, you don't even have to be a musician. What would that one word be?
Love.
What?
Love.
Love. Anybody else?
Feeling.
Passion.
Soul.
Soul. Life. Spiritual.
Feeling.
Feeling. Peace. What was that? Language?
Expression.
Expression. Yeah, you can repeat words if you want. It's your word. Anything else?
Joy.
Joy. I agree with all of them. Here's an interesting thing. I've been asking this question well over 10 years around the world, and I get the same answers. So I'm not surprised anymore to hear these words. I'm happy every time. And even though I know it's not going to happen, I still get, it's still surprising to me a little bit. Not the words you give me, but the words you don't give me. Nobody told me that music was notes, scales, techniques, theory, practice, exactly, right? And most of you play bass or guitar. You didn't even mention an instrument. So that lets me know that you know what music is and you also know what it isn't. So my question is, why do you think of those other words when it's time to play? When by your own definition, you're not even thinking of music when you play. But we expect people to hear it. So if those beautiful words is what music is to you, that should be at the forefront of your whole being every time you approach music and pick up an instrument. And if that's the case, people will hear it. If not, it's going to be a struggle for your listeners if we don't even remember what music is. That's really the key to my approach. I'm not even thinking bass. I'm not thinking notes, scales. I know how to do that, and when I practice, I might use that to help me describe my words better. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening. Here's a song called The Lesson. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Harky. Thank you, Out of Music. Thank you, Anthony Wellington.
Okay. I'm doing good. How you doing? I'm doing great, man. How's your health? Well, we'll talk.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, man. Sounds good. My legs are so stiff. I got a feel thing on here.
Guys, let's hear it one more time for Victor Wooten, demonstrating management course. Guys, right now we're gonna pick the winner of the raffle for the bass attack pedal made by Harky.
Did you choose one?
I chose one. I'm trying to read it. Little John Central at gmail.com. Is that you? You want to come on up from the steps over there?
Wow.
Hey, do you guys want to be in the picture with the winner?
Yeah!
Hey, Rob.
Do you need to get up there with the camera?
No,
please.
Do you know what it is?
I got it out there in the car. Been riding around with it.
How you doing?
That melody of a song that I wrote is like that's a song I wrote. We always play that. If you watch that song closely, you see me lose my G string. It's somewhere in the middle of the G string stop, so I know the ball is part of my stuff.
That's great.
Yeah, you have to show that too. Is that the same spot when Can you touch Yeah, we're gonna have to. We got a 45-minute You don't want to go give me that new pedal, right? Where should I sign
There's no age limit at the first year side, no age, all age.
Let's do it. Absolutely. You guys play together?
I never met you before in my life.
Play together? Make some music. Make some music. So you play?
It is Jason?
That's right, he was in Orlando.
Yeah, he texted me just a minute ago. Are you there? You talk to you. Okay. You take that. Right here, invite you to pay, man. You come back. Yeah, well, I used to live here, and I want to say that I went out, go out again. I'm sorry. Now, trying I see that. Should have. Now turn this one. I'll take I'll stop saying it. If you wait too long, I'll get it. You guys should get a head start. Jason, right? Which one?
Yeah.
Hey, man.
I'm going to ask.
I'm in the a lot. Tomorrow. But I'll be back. That's what you remember working on. Yeah. Construction. Yeah, you finished? Yeah, I'm still student ball right now.